Chapter 1: The Awakening. There comes a moment in every life when silence is louder than any thunder. A moment when the noise of the world, the endless chatter, the expectations, the comparisons, the suffocating chorus of opinions, suddenly feels unbearable. And in that moment, a question rises within you like fire tearing through dry wood. Whose life am I living? For too long, you may have carried the weight of other people's visions, the chains of their approval, the invisible leash of their judgments. You may have shaped yourself into what they wished you to be, only to find that when you looked in the mirror, you could barely recognize the face staring back. But here now is the rebellion. The rebellion not of violence, but of clarity. The rebellion of self. History is written by those who dared to step outside the echo of others and step fully into their own focus. Edison did not bow to those who laughed at his 1,000 failed attempts. He burned midnight after midnight, sharpening his vision until light itself obeyed him. Henry Ford was told by seasoned businessmen that no one needed a car, that the horse was eternal, but his focus was relentless, his vision unshakable, and he bent an entire industry to his will. This is the secret whispered through centuries: the man who focuses on himself, who shapes his own mind like a blade, who withdraws his energy from the meaningless and invests it into his becoming, he becomes unstoppable. But hear me, this is no easy path. To focus on yourself is to declare war on distractions. It is to face the most difficult enemy you will ever encounter, the weaker version of you. The one that clings to comfort, that seeks validation, that fears standing alone in the storm. That self must be dismantled, piece by piece, brick by brick. And from the ruins, you will build a fortress. Think of Abraham Lincoln, standing alone in the black silence of his failures, losing election after election, mocked as a nobody, broken by grief and yet refusing to bow. His focus was not on the opinions of those who scorned him, it was on the vision of a nation reborn. And because of that, he walked through the valley of despair and emerged as one of history's unshakable pillars. And what of Andrew Carnegie, the boy who began in poverty, working in a factory for pennies? Did he waste his energy envying the wealthy, blaming the world for its cruelty? He turned his gaze inward. He focused on sharpening his mind, on learning, on building, until the steel of his will became the steel that built cities. To focus on yourself is to stop bleeding energy into what you cannot control. It is to gather every scattered fragment of your attention and forge it into a weapon so sharp it cuts through excuses, through distractions, through fear itself. But listen closely. The world will not clap for you when you begin this journey. In fact, it will resist you. Friends may fade. Critics may multiply. Doubts will whisper. And yet, this resistance is the proof. Steel is not forged in calm waters. It is born in fire. Your solitude will be the furnace. Your determination, the hammer. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He was told he had no future in creativity. And yet, he withdrew from the voices of limitation and doubled down on his own vision. In barns, in small offices, on scraps of paper, he dreamed, and those dreams became kingdoms. That is what it means to focus on yourself until you win. To plant a seed that no one else believes in and water it with the sweat of your discipline until the world cannot ignore the forest you've grown. And so, I ask you now, how much longer will you allow the world to dictate the rhythm of your heart? How much longer will you hand away your focus like spare change to thieves of attention? You are not here to drown in the noise. You are here to awaken. Let this chapter be the spark, the first strike of the match against the stone. Feel it, the heat of your own possibility. Stand in it, unafraid. This is not the end of your story, it is the opening page of a new one. A story not written by chance, not dictated by others, but carved by your own unbreakable focus. Because once you focus on yourself, truly, relentlessly, without apology, everything changes. Chapter 2: The Power of Isolation. There is a truth that most people will never confront because it terrifies them. Growth demands isolation, not the shallow isolation of cutting yourself off from the world forever, but the sacred solitude of stepping away long enough to hear the sound of your own mind, to recognize your own heartbeat, to reclaim the fragments of your soul that you've scattered chasing acceptance, chasing applause, chasing a sense of belonging that only weakens you. Look back across history and you will find that every great figure, every titan who bent the arc of destiny, was first a solitary figure misunderstood in his own time. Nikola Tesla walking alone in his laboratory, experimenting not for recognition but for the pure pursuit of mastery, forgotten by society yet remembered by eternity. Leonardo da Vinci filling pages with sketches that no one would understand for centuries, ridiculed as strange, too obsessive, too focused, yet leaving behind a legacy that became the blueprint for modern imagination. To focus on yourself until you win, you must embrace the silence that frightens the ordinary. You must be willing to pull away from the comfort of constant company, the chatter of endless social distractions, and sit with your own thoughts until they no longer feel like enemies but like allies. This is where vision is born, not in the noise, not in the approval, but in the furnace of solitude where distractions are stripped away and only your raw will remains. Consider Lincoln in his youth, teaching himself by the dim glow of a fireplace, no mentors, no wealth, no privilege, only solitude, and the relentless hunger to learn. That hunger was sharpened not in comfort, but in loneliness. Or Henry Ford, who spent years obsessing over the moving assembly line, mocked by experts, dismissed by the powerful, yet in his isolation he discovered efficiency that revolutionized industry. Isolation is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the moment when you step back from the noise of the world and sharpen the blade of your focus so that when you return, you are unstoppable. But most people will never taste its power, because the moment solitude arrives, they run to fill it with distraction, scrolling, gossip, endless chatter. They fear being alone with themselves because deep down they know the truth. They have not yet built a self they respect enough to sit with. This is where your transformation begins. Not in grand speeches or sudden miracles, but in the quiet discipline of turning your gaze inward, of saying no to the distractions that keep you ordinary, of reclaiming the minutes and hours that slip away into emptiness. When you focus on yourself, you begin to build the muscle of discipline, the architecture of clarity, the fortress of vision. And once that fortress is built, nothing can tear it down. Do not mistake me, this path will be lonely at times. You will lose people. You will outgrow people. You will be called selfish, arrogant, even cold. But let them speak. Let them misunderstand. Because history is not written by those who kept everyone comfortable. It is written by those who dared to make themselves uncomfortable long enough to build something eternal. Think of Walt Disney again, bankrupt more than once, rejected by investors, laughed at for drawing cartoons when others saw no future in it. In his solitude, in his relentless commitment to his own vision, he built not just films, not just parks, but a universe of imagination that millions still live inside today. He did not ask for permission. He did not wait for validation. He focused on himself until his vision was undeniable. And now you must do the same. This chapter is not an invitation to hide from the world, but to refine yourself in the shadows so that when the world sees you, it sees a version of you forged in silence, sharpened by solitude, and unshakable in focus. Because the truth is this: until you learn to stand alone, you will never be strong enough to stand tall. Chapter 3, Mindset. The Battlefield Within. Every empire, every invention, every revolution first began not in the streets, not in factories, not on battlefields, but in the unseen chambers of the mind. The greatest wars of history were not fought with swords or cannons, but with thought itself, with belief, with the silent battles men and women fought against their own doubts. Before Edison could bring light to the world, he had to defeat the darkness of discouragement inside himself. Before Carnegie could build his steel empire, he had to destroy the limiting beliefs that told a poor immigrant boy he could never rise beyond the factory floor. Before Lincoln could preserve the Union, he had to conquer despair so deep it nearly destroyed him. The world sees the results, but the true war was always internal. Your mindset is the battlefield on which your destiny is decided. Every doubt you entertain, every excuse you justify, every fear you allow to grow becomes a soldier in the army of your defeat. Every belief in your own potential, every affirmation of your vision, Every disciplined thought becomes a soldier in the army of your victory. Which army will you strengthen? Because you cannot strengthen both. Mindset is not some shallow mantra whispered into the air. It is the foundation upon which every action rests. It is the governor of your energy, the commander of your willpower, the architect of your habits. If your mind is weak, no strategy, no opportunity, no resource will save you. But if your mind is fortified, if it is aligned with your purpose, then even when stripped of resources, even when abandoned by allies, even when faced with walls higher than mountains, you will find a way to climb, to break, to build, to conquer. Consider Henry Ford again. The world around him insisted that the horse was the future, that ordinary men could not afford machines, that his dream was impossible. But his mindset was built on possibility, not limitation. He declared, "Whether you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right." That was not simply a clever phrase. It was a principle that forged his empire. Ford understood that thought precedes creation, that the mind is the seedbed of every harvest. Or look at Abraham Lincoln in his darkest hours, when political defeat and personal tragedy struck like hammer blows. Many would have surrendered to despair, would have believed the whispers of failure. But Lincoln's mindset was not built on momentary victories or losses. It was anchored in something deeper, the conviction that his life had a purpose beyond himself. That conviction held him upright when every external circumstance told him to collapse. Mindset is not given. It is forged. It is built by the thoughts you choose daily, by the voices you allow into your head, by the words you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. The greatest enemy you face is not the critic outside. It is the critic within, the one that whispers, "You are not ready, you are not capable, you are not enough." And if you believe that voice, then it becomes true, not because it is reality, but because you accepted it as reality. This is why focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is survival. It is not about arrogance, it is about alignment. If you do not master your own mind, the world will master it for you. If you do not choose your thoughts, society will feed you theirs. And society will always tell you to play small, to stay comfortable, to fit in. But the giants of history, the visionaries, the creators, the builders, they refused the comfort of conformity. Their mindset was their rebellion. Walt Disney's mindset saw castles when all he had was paper and pencils. Andrew Carnegie's mindset saw steel empires when all he held were books borrowed from a library. Thomas Edison's mindset saw light when the world mocked his failures. These men were not extraordinary at birth. They became extraordinary because they fed their minds possibility, because they trained their thoughts like warriors, because they refused to let the noise of others drown out the voice of vision. So ask yourself now, what mindset governs you? Do you wake each day surrendered to distraction, defeated before you rise, haunted by doubts that you allow to grow stronger than your discipline? Or do you wake with a command to your mind? Today I conquer myself, today I direct my thoughts, today I build the fortress of belief that no storm can tear down. Do not think this is easy. It is not. Training the body is difficult, but training the mind is relentless. The body will resist for hours, the mind will resist for years. It will attempt to trick you, to seduce you back into weakness, to disguise limitation as reason. But every time you reject its lies, every time you replace doubt with conviction, every time you act with discipline instead of hesitation, you are building the mindset of a conqueror. And once that mindset is built, the world bends. Opportunities reveal themselves. People are drawn to you not by what you say but by the gravity of your conviction. This is why men like Lincoln, Edison, Carnegie, Ford, Disney still echo through history. Their companies and creations were not their true power, their mindsets were. Everything else was simply the fruit of that invisible root. So focus on yourself until your mindset is unbreakable. Withdraw from the noise, silence the inner critic, feed your thoughts with greatness, align your mind with vision. Because once the battlefield of your mind is won, every other battlefield becomes conquerable. Chapter 4: The Discipline of Clarity. If mindset is the battlefield, then clarity is the map. Without clarity, even the strongest willpower scatters itself into 1,000 directions, chasing fragments, pursuing half-formed dreams, wasting energy on pursuits that lead nowhere. A man without clarity is like a ship with torn sails, pushed endlessly by the winds of distraction, moving constantly yet arriving nowhere. The tragedy of modern life is not that people are unwilling to work hard. Many grind themselves into exhaustion. It is that they work without focus, without aim, without vision, and thus their labor becomes a wheel that spins but never moves forward. History teaches us that clarity is the dividing line between the dreamers who fade and the dreamers who build empires. Andrew Carnegie, as a boy in Pittsburgh, did not yet have wealth or influence, but he had clarity. He knew that knowledge would be his ladder. While other boys squandered hours, he borrowed books from a benefactor and devoured them with relentless hunger. That clarity guided every choice, every step, every sacrifice, until the factory boy became the titan of steel. Look at Thomas Edison, often remembered only for his genius, but behind his thousands of experiments was not chaos, it was clarity. He did not wander blindly through invention. He held a vision so sharp it cut through every failure. The world will have light. That clarity sustained him through ridicule, through fatigue, through endless setbacks. Had he lacked clarity, his failures would have broken him. But because he carried the map of a clear vision, every failure was simply a step toward that inevitable future. Walt Disney faced bankruptcy, rejection, and betrayal, yet his clarity was unshakable. He could close his eyes and see not just drawings on paper, but castles, kingdoms, worlds of imagination where children and adults alike could escape the weight of life. That clarity was so vivid that even when no one else believed, even when creditors closed in, even when critics laughed, Disney kept building because the picture in his mind was more real to him than the obstacles in front of him. Clarity is the weapon against distraction. Without it, your energy is stolen by every shiny object, every trivial pursuit, every opinion of others. With it, you can endure storms that would destroy lesser men. Clarity does not make life easier, it makes the struggle meaningful. When you know where you are going, suffering becomes bearable because it is leading somewhere. Discipline becomes tolerable because it has a purpose. Failure becomes tolerable because it is simply part of the path. Consider Abraham Lincoln again. His life was filled with losses, failed businesses, failed elections, personal tragedies, but his clarity was larger than his pain. His vision was of a united nation, of a democracy preserved against collapse. That clarity allowed him to carry burdens that would have crushed others, to rise again after every fall, because the destination was always clear, even when the road was brutal. And now consider your own life. How much of your energy is bled away by confusion? How many hours do you spend reacting instead of directing? How often do you move quickly but without aim, working hard but not on the right thing, filling your days with tasks that make you feel busy yet leave you empty? Without clarity, all effort is diluted, all progress is accidental, and time, your most precious currency, slips through your fingers unnoticed. Clarity demands courage, because to be clear about your purpose means to say no to everything that is not aligned with it. Most people avoid clarity because it forces them to admit uncomfortable truths, that many of their friendships are distractions, that much of their time is wasted, that their habits betray their vision. Clarity strips away illusion, leaving only the raw question: are you moving toward your purpose, or are you drifting? Henry Ford did not simply build cars. His clarity was in building affordability, in giving the common man access to mobility. That laser focus shaped every decision he made, from the assembly line to the wages he paid his workers. He did not try to be everything to everyone. He pursued one clear goal with such obsession that the world was forced to follow. The discipline of clarity is not about knowing every step, it is about knowing the destination. The path will twist, storms will come, detours will appear, but clarity ensures that no matter how often you stumble, you rise facing the same direction. When Carnegie built libraries, when Edison built laboratories, when Lincoln wrote speeches, when Disney sketched kingdoms, they were guided not by luck but by vision. They knew the where, even if the how had to be discovered along the way. To focus on yourself until you win means to carve out time for clarity, to step away from the noise long enough to define what your life is about. It means writing down your vision so vividly that it burns into your mind, so clear that distractions lose their power, so undeniable that you can close your eyes and see it as if it were already built. Because here is the truth: the world does not reward effort, it rewards clarity. The man who works 20 hours a day with no vision will be overtaken by the man who works 6 hours a day with focus so sharp it cuts through every obstacle. The scattered worker exhausts himself. The clear worker directs himself. And in the end, only one builds a legacy. So guard your clarity as you would guard your life. Do not let the noise of the world blur your vision. Do not let the distractions of others dilute your focus. Do not allow yourself to move quickly in the wrong direction. Choose the mountain you will climb, and then climb it with all the fire in your soul. Because clarity is power. Clarity is freedom. Clarity is destiny. And without it, all the strength in the world is wasted. Chapter 5: Vision, the fire that shapes reality. Every man is born with eyes, but not every man is born with vision. Eyes see what is. Vision sees what can be. Eyes are bound by the present. Vision is liberated by the future. The difference between those who live and die forgotten and those who live forever in the echo of history is not strength, not talent, not resources, but vision, the fire of possibility that burns so fiercely within them that it consumes every excuse, every fear, every limitation, until the world itself bends to its heat. Look at the giants whose names we still whisper with reverence. Thomas Edison was not simply a man tinkering with wires and glass. He was a man who saw a world illuminated before such a world existed. His eyes saw darkness, but his vision saw cities alive with light. Andrew Carnegie's eyes saw soot-filled factories, but his vision saw an empire of steel that would raise skyscrapers and bridges into the heavens. Walt Disney's eyes saw scraps of paper and ink, but his vision saw kingdoms where imagination became reality. Henry Ford's eyes saw horses and dirt roads, but his vision saw ordinary men and women behind the wheel of machines that would reshape civilization. Abraham Lincoln's eyes saw a fractured nation, but his vision saw unity, liberty, a future that his own time declared impossible. Vision is the birthplace of destiny. Without it, the strongest man wanders aimlessly, the most disciplined worker builds castles for someone else. The most talented mind wastes away in trivial pursuits. But with vision, even the weakest man can become unstoppable, because vision transforms ordinary action into extraordinary purpose. You must understand this: the world will not hand you vision. It will hand you distraction, noise, comparison, endless temptation to look everywhere except within. Vision is not found in the shallow currents of society's approval. It is found in the deep waters of solitude. It is born when you withdraw long enough to ask yourself, what am I building with my life? What mountain am I climbing? What picture of the future compels me to endure suffering today? Until you answer those questions, you will remain a wanderer. Once you answer them, you become a force of nature. History shows us that visionaries are often ridiculed in their time because vision threatens the comfortable. When Ford spoke of his automobiles, the experts laughed, insisting that the world would never give up horses. When Disney spoke of theme parks, bankers called him delusional. When Lincoln declared that slavery would be abolished, critics declared it political suicide. When Edison failed hundreds of times to invent the light bulb, the newspapers mocked him. And yet, each of them held to their vision with such tenacity that their very failures became bricks in the foundation of their eventual triumphs. That is the power of vision. It allows you to see beyond failure, beyond ridicule, beyond rejection. When your eyes see defeat, vision whispers, "This is not the end. This is part of the becoming." Without vision, a setback looks permanent. With vision, a setback is merely a chapter in the epic story you are writing. But vision is not fantasy. Do not confuse it with idle daydreaming. Vision is precise, disciplined, ruthless in its demand for clarity. It does not float aimlessly, it directs. It does not simply imagine, it commands. When Disney envisioned Disneyland, he did not merely say, "I want a place for children." He pictured the castle, the rides, the streets, the feeling of wonder. When Lincoln envisioned a united nation, he did not simply hope for peace. He articulated a world where freedom was not a privilege but a birthright. When Edison envisioned light, he did not simply fantasize about glowing bulbs, he envisioned an entire system of energy that would electrify civilization. To focus on yourself until you win, you must cultivate vision as though your life depends on it. Because it does. Without vision, you will live as a slave to the vision of others. You will spend your days laboring under someone else's dream, serving someone else's kingdom, building someone else's legacy. But when you carry vision, you no longer drift, you direct. You no longer beg, you build. You no longer wait, you create. And yet, vision alone is not enough. Many have glimpsed possibilities, but few have carried them into reality, because vision without discipline is hallucination. Vision is the spark, but discipline is the fuel. Vision gives you the picture of the mountain, discipline gives you the steps to climb it. Edison's vision of light would have died in his notebooks had he not endured thousands of disciplined experiments. Carnegie's dream of steel empires would have remained fantasy if he had not endured the endless grind of business, negotiation, and construction. Disney's dreams would have rotted in sketchbooks if he had not fought tooth and nail through bankruptcy, lawsuits, and rejection. Vision gives you the why. Discipline builds the how. But before discipline, before resilience, before action itself, there must be vision, because without vision, discipline has no aim, resilience has no direction, action has no meaning. Imagine an archer with perfect form, perfect strength, perfect focus, but no target. His arrows will scatter into the void. That is a man without vision. Imagine now a frail archer with trembling hands, but he has a clear target, and he refuses to stop shooting. One day his arrow strikes. That is a man with vision. Which one are you? Do not fear if your vision seems too large. In fact, fear if it feels too small. A vision that does not frighten you is not vision. It is comfort disguised as ambition. Edison's vision was outrageous. Disney's vision was absurd. Lincoln's vision was impossible. Ford's vision was laughable. And yet, those visions that seemed too large for their time became the very realities we now take for granted. Let your vision be so vast it makes others question your sanity. Let it be so consuming that you cannot sleep without dreaming of it, cannot rest without working for it, cannot live without pursuing it. The enemy of vision is not failure, it is distraction. It is the slow erosion of focus by trivial pursuits, by meaningless conversations, by the endless scroll of wasted time. You do not lose vision in one great collapse. You lose it drip by drip, day by day, until one morning you wake up and realize that you no longer burn, you only exist. Guard your vision as a king guards his crown. Protect it from the thieves of attention. Feed it with study, with reflection, with solitude, with relentless execution. And remember this, vision is not for you alone. Every true vision carries within it the power to impact lives beyond your own. Edison's light did not end at his laboratory door. Lincoln's words did not end at his own people. Disney's kingdoms did not end with his imagination. True vision spreads. It multiplies. It builds bridges across generations. It outlives its creator. When you build with vision, you are not merely constructing for yourself, you are carving your name into the architecture of eternity. So ask yourself tonight, what do I see that others cannot? What mountain am I willing to die climbing? What fire burns in me so strongly that I would rather endure ridicule and failure than live one more day without pursuing it? That is your vision. Do not run from it. Do not silence it. Do not dilute it for the comfort of those who cannot see what you see. Hold it. Feed it. Live it. Because once you carry vision, you are no longer a prisoner of the present. You are the author of the future. And the world cannot stop a man or woman who has decided, with unshakable clarity, this is the life I will build, and nothing will deter me. Chapter 6, Purpose, the Anchor of Greatness. There is something more powerful than money, more enduring than fame, more unshakable than strength, and more liberating than freedom itself. It is purpose. Purpose is the compass that directs the storm. Purpose is the anchor that holds you steady when the winds of chaos rise. Purpose is the hidden current that pulls men beyond the limits of fear, beyond the walls of doubt, beyond the chains of weakness, and into the realm of greatness. Without purpose, success itself becomes hollow, wealth becomes empty, and achievement becomes dust. With purpose, even suffering becomes sacred, and sacrifice becomes a privilege. History remembers those who lived not merely for themselves but for a vision tied to a deeper purpose. Abraham Lincoln did not endure the torment of political defeat and personal tragedy simply to wear a title or to satisfy his ambition. His purpose was larger. It was to preserve a nation, to give birth to a freedom that would echo through centuries. That purpose carried him through storms that would have broken other men, and it turned his name into an eternal symbol of resilience and justice. Andrew Carnegie's purpose was not simply to accumulate wealth. Yes, he became one of the richest men of his era, but his life revealed something greater. He believed that wealth carried with it a moral obligation to serve humanity. He gave away more than 90% of his fortune to build libraries, universities, and institutions that would educate generations long after his own death. Wealth alone would have faded. Purpose made his wealth immortal. Consider also Walt Disney. His purpose was not simply to draw cartoons or to make films. His purpose was to ignite imagination, to give children and adults a place where wonder could live again, to create worlds where the impossible became real. That purpose drove him through bankruptcy, through rejection, through failure after failure, until his dream was no longer a dream but a living reality that continues to shape childhood across the globe. And what of Henry Ford? His purpose was not to build cars for the wealthy elite. Others had already done that. His purpose was to bring mobility to the common man, to give working families the freedom to travel, to connect, to live in ways they never thought possible. That purpose became the foundation of an industry that changed the modern world forever. You see, purpose transforms toil into triumph. The man without purpose wakes tired, works without joy, struggles without meaning, and in the end, no matter how much he achieves, he remains empty. The man with purpose, even in hardship, even in obscurity, carries within him a fire that cannot be extinguished. He may have nothing, and yet he feels as though he has everything, because every step, every breath, every act is connected to something greater than himself. But purpose does not fall from the sky. It is not given, it is discovered, uncovered, fought for. Purpose reveals itself in silence, in reflection, in the courage to ask yourself questions most avoid. Why am I here? What is the meaning behind the suffering I endure? What is the mark I wish to leave upon this world? If I died tomorrow, what unfinished work would haunt me most? These are not easy questions, but the man who answers them gains something rarer than wealth. He gains direction. Most people avoid purpose because it demands responsibility. To live with purpose means to carry weight, to live not only for yourself but for something larger. It means sacrifice. It means saying no to distractions, no to temptations, no to the comfort of drifting. It means choosing the narrow road over the wide one, the difficult climb over the easy fall. That is why so many choose comfort over calling, pleasure over purpose. But history does not remember the comfortable. History remembers the purposeful. Think of Thomas Edison again. His purpose was not simply to invent. His purpose was to improve human life through technology, to make progress available to the masses. That sense of mission carried him through thousands of failures, nights of exhaustion, years of ridicule. Purpose is what allowed him to see each failure not as death but as discovery. Without purpose, he would have quit after his 100th attempt. With purpose, he endured until the 1000th, and the world was changed forever. Purpose is what transforms ordinary men into forces of nature. The Roman general who fights only for power may win battles, but is forgotten. The one who fights with the purpose of defending his people, of preserving something greater, is remembered in the songs of history. The businessman who builds simply for profit is replaced. The one who builds with a purpose that serves humanity is immortalized. The artist who creates only for attention is ignored. The one who creates with purpose speaks across generations. And you, what is your purpose? Do not settle for shallow answers. Money is not purpose. Status is not purpose. Pleasure is not purpose. These things vanish in time, leaving nothing behind. Purpose is the impact that remains when you are gone. Purpose is the legacy written in lives you touched, in ideas you built, in truths you stood for, in courage you lived. Purpose demands focus. You cannot live with purpose if your attention is scattered. The man who chases everything fulfills nothing. Purpose means narrowing your life to what matters most, saying this is the path I will walk, and though it costs me comfort, though it costs me approval, though it costs me years of struggle, I will not turn aside. That kind of purpose makes you unstoppable. But beware, the world will not support your purpose. It will mock it, resist it, try to dilute it. Friends may tell you you're dreaming too big. Society may tell you to stay small. Your own fears will whisper that you are unworthy. Yet all of this is the proof you are on the right path, for no true purpose is born without resistance. Steel is not forged in calm waters, it is forged in fire. When Lincoln rose to abolish slavery, half a nation rose against him. When Ford built the Model T, critics dismissed him as insane. When Disney sought to build his kingdom of imagination, bankers laughed in his face. When Carnegie began to fund libraries, people questioned his motives. And yet, each endured because their purpose was larger than their pain. This is what you must understand. Purpose is not about avoiding pain, it is about embracing it, transforming it, harnessing it. Without purpose, pain destroys you. With purpose, pain becomes the chisel that carves you into something greater. Without purpose, failure ends you. With purpose, failure teaches you. Without purpose, criticism wounds you. With purpose, criticism sharpens you. Purpose does not make life easier, but it makes life meaningful, and meaning is the one force that can carry you through anything. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, do not begin with mere ambition. Begin with purpose. Do not begin with shallow goals. Begin with a calling that sets your soul ablaze. When you have purpose, you can endure seasons of solitude, storms of doubt, years of obscurity, because you know the weight you carry is not in vain. Purpose whispers to you when the world goes silent. Purpose lifts you when you collapse. Purpose holds you when everything else falls apart. Chapter 7, Discipline, the Forge of Destiny. Discipline is the bridge between vision and reality, the hammer that forges the raw ore of your potential into the steel of achievement. Without discipline, vision remains a fantasy, dreams remain illusions, and purpose remains an echo that never materializes into substance. Discipline is not glamorous, it is not applauded, it does not sparkle with the immediate thrill of inspiration, but it is the one force that separates the conqueror from the conquered, the builder from the dreamer, the immortal from the forgotten. Think of Thomas Edison once more. When we speak of him, we speak of light, of invention, of genius. But what was his true genius? Not flashes of brilliance, but relentless discipline. He tested filament after filament, experiment after experiment, failing not 10 times, not 100 times, but over 1,000 times. His genius was discipline. Discipline to return to his laboratory night after night, to rise when others would have surrendered, to endure the monotony of failure because he was committed to his vision. Discipline was the engine of his triumph. Or consider Andrew Carnegie. He did not rise from factory boy to steel magnate by chance or luck. He disciplined himself to read when others rested, to study when others wasted time, to calculate, to learn, to apply, to master every detail of industry. His fortune was not built in moments of excitement. It was carved in years of steady, disciplined labor, in habits so consistent they seemed unbreakable. Walt Disney, too, was no mere dreamer. Yes, he carried imagination, but imagination alone would have starved him in the alleys of rejection. What carried him through bankruptcy, through ridicule, through endless financial struggle, was discipline. The discipline to rise again after failure, to sketch again after rejection, to negotiate again after betrayal. Every castle he built in his mind was built in reality because discipline laid its stones. And Henry Ford. His discipline was obsession. He studied machines with a relentless focus that most found unbearable. He trained his mind to see systems, to endure setbacks, to refine designs until they worked. His assembly line was not a product of luck. It was the fruit of years of disciplined experimentation. Abraham Lincoln, too, was disciplined, not in machines or inventions, but in his mind, his words, his law, his leadership. He disciplined himself to study rhetoric, to read law books late into the night, to write and rewrite speeches until every word was sharpened. His greatness did not appear in a single moment of brilliance. It was the cumulative weight of disciplined choices stacked upon each other, forming a mountain that history could not ignore. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think discipline means suffering, deprivation, or punishment. Discipline is freedom. The disciplined man is free because he is not a slave to impulse. He is free because he is not swayed by distraction. He is free because he directs himself instead of being directed by circumstance. Discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect. To discipline yourself is to declare, I am worthy of control, I am worthy of order, I am worthy of the life I claim to desire. Without discipline, vision collapses under the weight of inconsistency. Without discipline, purpose rots in procrastination. Without discipline, talent rusts into irrelevance. Talent without discipline is like a sword left to corrode. Potential without discipline is like an unlit fire, full of possibility yet powerless. The disciplined man, even if untalented, even if disadvantaged, even if underestimated, will surpass the gifted man who lacks order. History proves this. The armies that conquered were not always the largest, but the most disciplined. Rome did not build its empire through mere numbers. It built through discipline, through soldiers trained to obey, to endure, to move as one. In war, the undisciplined break at the first sign of pressure. In life, the undisciplined surrender at the first sign of difficulty. But the disciplined endure, and endurance always wins. Discipline is not about what you do once, it is about what you do daily. It is not about passion in a moment, it is about consistency over years. Anyone can rise in a moment of inspiration, but discipline asks, can you rise tomorrow? And the next day? And the next? Discipline is monotony turned to greatness. It is repetition turned to excellence. It is sacrifice turned to legacy. Do not think discipline is born of feeling. Feelings are liars. Feelings tell you to stay in bed. Feelings tell you to quit when it hurts. Feelings tell you to eat what is easy, to take what is comfortable, to avoid what is hard. Discipline does not consult feelings. Discipline obeys decisions. Discipline is the voice that says, I made a choice and I will honor it whether I feel like it or not. Look at the lives of the greats. Edison did not feel like failing for years. Lincoln did not feel like enduring loss after loss. Carnegie did not feel like laboring endlessly as a boy. Ford did not feel like being mocked by experts. Disney did not feel like being bankrupt. But each chose discipline over feeling. And because of that, the world remembers them. The tragedy of modern times is that people chase motivation while neglecting discipline. They want to feel inspired, to feel excited, to feel ready. But motivation is fleeting. Discipline is permanent. Motivation comes and goes like the wind, but discipline is the steel that holds no matter the weather. If you rely on motivation, you will move only when conditions are perfect. If you rely on discipline, you will move whether it rains, whether it burns, whether the world applauds or condemns. Discipline is built in small things before it shows in great things. If you cannot discipline yourself to rise in the morning, how will you discipline yourself to rise in a crisis? If you cannot discipline yourself to complete small tasks, how will you discipline yourself to complete great works? The man who cannot rule himself cannot rule anything. The woman who cannot master her own habits cannot master her destiny. Discipline is not about grand gestures. It is about small victories multiplied until they create empires. Consider again the Roman legions. Their power was not in the grand battles alone, but in daily drills, in endless training, in ordinary acts of discipline repeated until extraordinary strength was inevitable. In the same way, your destiny is not built in one dramatic act. It is built in the unseen discipline of today, tomorrow, and the next. And do not forget, discipline is contagious. A disciplined life commands respect, draws allies, and silences critics. People may laugh at your vision, they may question your purpose, but they cannot deny your discipline. They may dismiss your dreams, but they cannot dismiss your consistency. Discipline speaks louder than words. Discipline shouts in silence. Discipline proves what doubt denies. So ask yourself, are you willing to discipline your life until greatness is not optional but inevitable? Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for clarity, ease for excellence, distraction for destiny? Because greatness is never the result of accident. Greatness is always the offspring of discipline. Chapter 8, Action, the weapon of transformation. There comes a point when vision is not enough, when purpose is not enough, when even the sharpest mindset and the strictest discipline become nothing but potential energy locked inside the walls of thought. That point is the threshold between the dreamer and the doer, between the man who speaks of destiny and the man who builds it with his hands, between the one who lives in the shadows of imagination and the one who carves monuments into the face of the earth. That threshold is action. Action is the weapon of transformation. Action is the moment when the invisible becomes visible, when the unseen becomes tangible, when the ideas that lived only in silence begin to roar in the world. The greatest tragedy of mankind is not that people lack dreams, not that they lack purpose, not even that they lack vision. It is that they never move. They wait. They hesitate. They plan endlessly but never strike. They tell themselves they are preparing, but in truth they are hiding. They mistake thought for progress, and they mistake delay for strategy. And so their years slip away, and their potential rots within them, unexpressed, unfulfilled, forgotten. But those who act, those who dare to step forward, even in imperfection, even in fear, those are the ones history remembers. Consider Thomas Edison again. Imagine if he had stopped at the idea of light. Imagine if he had said to himself, "Yes, the world needs illumination, but I must wait until the conditions are perfect, until I am certain, until I feel ready." The world would still be lit by candles. Edison's greatness was not merely vision, it was relentless action, action repeated thousands of times, action undeterred by failure, action that refused to bow to ridicule. Action transformed his dream into the reality that now shapes the very nights we live in. Andrew Carnegie, too, was a man of action. He did not wait until he was wealthy to begin moving. He began as a boy, acting on every opportunity, no matter how small, disciplining himself to seize even the tiniest opening and turn it into growth. He read. He studied. He networked. He worked. And with each action, the boy who had nothing built a foundation that became an empire. Had he waited for luck, he would have died in poverty. Action was his fortune. Walt Disney's imagination was vast, but it was his action that birthed kingdoms. He acted when no one believed. He acted when banks refused him. He acted when bankruptcy tried to bury him. He acted when critics ridiculed him. He sketched, he wrote, he pitched, he rebuilt. Vision without action would have left his dreams to rot in notebooks. Action turned them into a world that still expands today. And Henry Ford, his action was tireless. He failed in business after business, each collapse a weight that would have crushed most men. But Ford acted again. He rebuilt again. He experimented again. He refused to remain paralyzed in defeat. And with each action, he drew closer to the moment when the assembly line changed history. Even Abraham Lincoln. His greatness was not in speeches alone. His greatness was in action. In the face of hostility, in the shadow of civil war, in the storm of criticism, he acted. He signed. He moved. He commanded. He bled. He chose action when paralysis would have been safer, when hesitation would have been easier, when silence would have been more comfortable. And because of that, the nation endured. This is the law of life. The world does not reward intention, it rewards execution. The graveyards are filled with men and women who intended to build, intended to write, intended to change, intended to rise, but never did. The difference between the forgotten and the remembered is action. Action is the cure to fear. Every man feels fear. Every woman feels doubt. But fear grows in stillness. It multiplies in hesitation. It suffocates in delay. The moment you move, fear begins to shrink. Action is the antidote. Fear cannot hold its shape in the presence of movement. That is why those who act boldly seem fearless, not because they lack fear, but because they refuse to feed it with stagnation. Action is also the cure to confusion. Many wait for clarity before they move. But clarity does not come in the waiting. It comes in the doing. You do not discover your path by standing still. You discover it by walking, by stumbling, by moving. Edison did not know which filament would work until he acted. Ford did not know which design would succeed until he acted. Disney did not know which story would resonate until he acted. Clarity is not the starting point. It is the reward of action. And action is the cure to weakness. Muscles do not grow by thinking about them. They grow by lifting, by moving, by enduring resistance. The mind is the same. Courage does not grow in theory, it grows in practice. Resilience does not grow in hope, it grows in trial. Action builds strength where passivity rots it. But hear this, action must be relentless. One act is not enough. A single effort will not change destiny. Action must become rhythm, habit, identity. The greats did not act once, they acted endlessly. They acted when inspired, and they acted when uninspired. They acted when praised, and they acted when mocked. They acted when confident, and they acted when broken. Action became who they were. And because of that, history cannot forget them. So many today are paralyzed by the illusion of perfection. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect resources. But perfection is a myth. There is no perfect time, no flawless plan, no guaranteed outcome. The only perfect moment is the one you act in. Edison's experiments were imperfect. Ford's early cars were imperfect. Disney's first films were imperfect. Lincoln's speeches were imperfect. Yet each imperfection carved the path to greatness. Action perfects. Inaction preserves imperfection. And so I say, strike. Begin. Fail if you must, but fail forward. Fall if you must, but fall while advancing. For even failure in action carries honor, but hesitation carries only regret. History's greatest regret is not failure, it is inaction. Edison did not regret his 1,000 failed experiments. Ford did not regret his bankruptcies. Disney did not regret his rejections. Lincoln did not regret his defeats. Because each action, even in failure, became a stepping stone. But how many men and women now lie in graves whispering of the books they never wrote, the businesses they never built, the dreams they never pursued? They are haunted not by what they did, but by what they did not do. And here is the truth, action compounds. One step leads to another. One victory, no matter how small, builds momentum. One effort, no matter how imperfect, ignites confidence. Action multiplies itself. The first strike may be weak, but it awakens something. The second grows stronger. The third stronger still. Until one day, you realize that the momentum of action has carried you farther than you thought possible. But just as action compounds forward, inaction compounds backward. One delay becomes two. One excuse becomes habit. One hesitation becomes paralysis. The man who hesitates once finds it easier to hesitate again, until his life is nothing but a pattern of surrender. That is why inaction is more dangerous than failure. Failure teaches, but inaction only corrodes. The question is not whether you will act perfectly, but whether you will act at all. The question is not whether you will fail, but whether you will rise again. The question is not whether you will feel ready, but whether you will move despite not feeling ready. These questions separate the conqueror from the conquered. Discipline gives you the strength to continue. Vision gives you the direction. Purpose gives you the reason. But only action moves you forward. Without action, the strongest vision is wasted, the clearest purpose is abandoned, the sharpest discipline is empty. Action is the spark that sets all other virtues aflame. Think of history's greatest builders. None of them knew if their actions would succeed. None of them had certainty. But they acted anyway. That is what made them great. The certainty they lacked at the beginning was earned through the actions they took. You too will never know until you move. You will never discover your strength until you lift. You will never know your courage until you act in fear. You will never know your path until you begin walking. So let this truth burn into you. Destiny does not come to those who wait. It comes to those who act. Success does not fall from heaven. It is built by the hands of those who move. Legacy is not granted. It is carved into stone by those who strike, who endure, who persist in the face of storms. And so, focus on yourself until you win, but understand that focusing does not mean sitting still, meditating endlessly on potential. Focus means aligning your purpose, your vision, your discipline, and then moving with force, moving with persistence, moving with a commitment so unshakable that nothing can hold you. Because in the end, the world does not reward the one who dreams the most. It rewards the one who acted the most. The statues we see, the cities we live in, the nations we inherit, the technology we use, the stories we treasure, all are the children of action. And if you wish your life to echo in history, if you wish your name to matter beyond the silence of the grave, then you must act. Act with fire. Act with focus. Act with relentless conviction until your life itself becomes a monument to movement. For action is not simply what you do. Action is who you become. And the one who lives in action becomes unstoppable. Chapter 9. Resilience, the immortal spirit. There is a quality that towers above intelligence, above talent, above even discipline and action. It is the rarest quality, the one that defines whether a man endures or collapses, whether a dream lives or dies, whether a legacy survives or is buried in the dust of time. That quality is resilience. Resilience is not strength in comfort, it is strength in collapse. Resilience is not the roar of triumph. It is the whisper that says, "Rise again," when you are shattered, when you are broken, when every voice tells you to surrender. Look back at the lives of those who changed the world, and you will see resilience burning brighter than any other virtue. Thomas Edison was resilient not because he succeeded, but because he refused to surrender after 1,000 failures. Each failure was a hammer, each rejection a fire, each ridicule a storm, and still he rose. Had he quit on the 999th attempt, the world would know his name only as a footnote of wasted potential. But resilience carried him to the 1,000th attempt, and that attempt changed humanity. Abraham Lincoln's entire life was a monument to resilience. He faced loss after loss, defeat after defeat, grief that would have crushed lesser men. He lost elections. He lost businesses. He buried children. He endured ridicule, betrayal, and despair so deep that his very mind seemed to collapse under its weight. And yet, he rose again, not once, not twice, but endlessly, until the man the world mocked as a failure became the leader who preserved a nation. Without resilience, Lincoln would have been forgotten. With it, he became immortal. Andrew Carnegie's rise from poverty was not a straight climb. He faced hardship, exploitation, and obstacles at every turn. But resilience made him relentless. He refused to remain trapped in circumstance. He refused to allow poverty to dictate his future. Every challenge was fuel. Every rejection was a lesson. Every wall was a ladder. Resilience carried him from the factory floor to the throne of industry. Walt Disney's empire was not born in smooth success. He was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He went bankrupt. He was cheated. He was mocked. Yet resilience drove him back to the drawing board, back to the storyboards, back to the vision he refused to abandon. He was resilient enough to rebuild from ruins, and from those ruins, he built kingdoms of imagination that still shape the dreams of millions. Henry Ford's life, too, was a testimony of resilience. Before the Model T, before the assembly line, Ford faced business failures, financial disasters, ridicule from experts who dismissed his ideas. Each collapse could have been the end. But Ford was resilient enough to rebuild, resilient enough to refine, resilient enough to endure until his ideas conquered the world. You see, resilience is the ultimate multiplier. A man may be talented, disciplined, visionary, but if he collapses at the first storm, all of it is wasted. Resilience is the shield that protects all other virtues. Resilience is what ensures that purpose survives pain, that vision survives failure, that discipline survives fatigue, that action survives resistance. Without resilience, every other virtue dies in time. With resilience, even the smallest spark can become an eternal flame. Resilience is not born in comfort. It is born in trial. It is born when the ground collapses beneath you, when your hands bleed, when your eyes burn, when your soul screams, and yet, you do not quit. That moment of choice, when quitting would be easier, when surrender would be rational, when stopping would be justified, that is the crucible of resilience. That is where legends are born. Consider the Roman legions, undefeated for centuries, not because they never faced defeat, but because they were resilient enough to endure losses, to retreat when needed, to rebuild, to return stronger. Empires rise not on perfection, but on resilience. Civilizations survive not because they avoid collapse, but because they endure collapse and rise again. So too with the individual. Your life will collapse. Do not doubt it. You will face failure, betrayal, heartbreak, despair. You will lose battles. You will be mocked, ignored, underestimated. You will carry pain so heavy you will question whether rising again is possible. And in that moment, resilience will speak, or it will remain silent. And that silence will decide everything. Resilience is not denial of pain. It does not ignore suffering. It does not pretend life is fair. Resilience acknowledges the storm but refuses to drown. Resilience feels the fire but refuses to burn away. Resilience knows the weight of grief but refuses to remain buried. It is not the absence of breaking. It is the refusal to remain broken. And here is the truth: resilience is a choice. You are not born with it fully formed. You build it by refusing to quit in the small battles, so that when the great battles arrive, you are ready. Every time you endure a hardship without surrender, you forge resilience. Every time you rise when you could have stayed down, you strengthen it. Resilience is built repetition by repetition, failure by failure, storm by storm. Think again of Edison. His resilience was not sudden. It was forged in every small experiment, in every small failure, until resilience itself became his identity. Think of Lincoln. His resilience was not born in the White House. It was forged in years of defeats, in the loneliness of failure, in the silence of despair, until his soul itself was unbreakable. Resilience requires perspective. The man who sees failure as the end collapses. The man who sees failure as a step continues. The man who views storms as punishments collapses. The man who views storms as teachers endures. Perspective feeds resilience. That is why the greats interpret suffering differently than the ordinary. Where most see defeat, they see foundation. Where most see rejection, they see redirection. Where most see pain, they see preparation. Resilience also requires humility. The arrogant cannot be resilient, because arrogance collapses at the first wound to pride. The resilient are humble enough to learn, humble enough to adapt, humble enough to admit mistakes, humble enough to rise without needing applause. Resilience is not the roar of ego, it is the quiet strength of endurance. And resilience requires faith, not blind faith, not fantasy, but faith in the future, faith in purpose, faith that the pain you endure will not be wasted. Every great figure carried such faith. Lincoln had faith in unity. Edison had faith in progress. Disney had faith in imagination. Ford had faith in efficiency. Carnegie had faith in growth. That faith made resilience possible, because it gave meaning to suffering. So how do you build resilience? You build it by embracing hardship instead of fleeing it. You build it by refusing to let setbacks define you. You build it by interpreting every storm as preparation, every trial as training, every failure as foundation. Resilience is not built in comfort. Resilience is built in fire. And those who embrace fire cannot be destroyed. Resilience is also contagious. When you refuse to quit, you inspire others to rise. When you endure, you strengthen those around you. Lincoln's resilience lifted a nation. Edison's resilience ignited an industry. Disney's resilience created worlds that continue to teach children not to give up. Your resilience, too, can ripple beyond you, shaping lives you will never meet. Chapter 10: Adaptability, the shape of survival, the weapon of victory. If discipline is the forge, if resilience is the armor, then adaptability is the weapon that cuts through the unknown. For life is not static, destiny is not a straight line, and history does not bend to those who remain rigid. The world changes, violently and without mercy, and only those who adapt, those who bend without breaking, those who evolve without losing essence, survive to carve their mark upon time. Adaptability is not weakness. It is not surrender. Adaptability is strength made fluid. It is intelligence made alive. It is vision made flexible enough to conquer shifting terrain. Look at history, and you will see the law of adaptability written in blood and glory. The great empires that refused to adapt, Rome in its arrogance, ancient dynasties clinging to the past, collapsed beneath the weight of their own rigidity. But those who adapted, who adjusted, who transformed with the times, lived, expanded, and endured. The law of life is evolution, and evolution favors not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most adaptable. Thomas Edison was adaptable. He was not bound to one invention, not chained to one path. He experimented across industries, from sound to motion pictures to energy systems. When one idea failed, he did not collapse. He shifted, he pivoted, he adapted. That adaptability ensured that he was not remembered as a man of a single creation, but as a fountain of innovation. Had he been rigid, he would have been forgotten after his first failure. But adaptability made him eternal. Andrew Carnegie adapted to the tides of industry. He was born in poverty, worked in factories, lived through shifts of technology and commerce. He saw opportunities where others saw endings. When the world shifted from iron to steel, he adapted with ferocity, building an empire on a new foundation. And when his empire was complete, he adapted again, transforming from an industrialist into a philanthropist. His legacy was not frozen in a single identity. It evolved, it adapted, it expanded. Walt Disney's life was a masterclass in adaptability. When silent films gave way to sound, he adapted. When critics laughed at full-length animated features, he adapted. When financial ruin loomed, he adapted, creating new ventures, new strategies, new worlds. When television rose to challenge the movie industry, he adapted, embracing it, expanding his vision. His ability to adjust without abandoning his core purpose made him unstoppable. Henry Ford, too, had adaptability, though at times his stubbornness almost destroyed him. His genius was the assembly line, the Model T, the democratization of mobility. But when the world demanded evolution, he resisted too long. Yet even then, Ford Motor Company adapted, survived, and endured. The lesson is this: even the titans must bend, or they will break. And Abraham Lincoln. His entire leadership was built on adaptability. In the chaos of civil war, no plan survived contact with reality. He shifted strategies, adjusted policies, adapted his words to changing tides, navigated shifting alliances. He was not rigid, for rigidity would have destroyed the Union. His adaptability was his strength, the reason he could guide a fractured nation through the storm. Adaptability is not betrayal of vision, it is the survival of vision. The mountain does not move in a straight line. The path wins, the storms rage, the terrain shifts. If you are rigid, you break. If you are adaptable, you bend, you adjust, you continue climbing. The summit remains the same, but the path may change 1,000 times. The tragedy of the ordinary man is that he clings to comfort, clings to the familiar, clings to the illusion of stability. He resists change, fears it, curses it. But change is inevitable. The world will change with or without him. The adaptable man, however, does not curse change, he masters it. He studies it. He bends it to his will. Look at the natural world. The oak tree stands tall, unyielding, rigid. A great storm comes, and the oak cracks, collapses, dies. The reed, however, thins. The wind howls, the storm rages, but the reed adapts, and when the storm passes, the reed stands while the oak lies broken. This is adaptability, not weakness, but strength disguised as flexibility. Adaptability requires humility. The arrogant cannot adapt because they cling to their own certainty, their own ego, their own belief that they are right no matter what. The adaptable are humble enough to admit error, to shift course, to learn anew. Edison adapted because he was humble enough to accept failure as feedback. Lincoln adapted because he was humble enough to listen, to adjust. Disney adapted because he was humble enough to evolve his art. Adaptability is the child of humility and courage. Adaptability requires courage because change is frightening. To step away from the familiar into the unknown demands bravery. The rigid hide in the comfort of routine, even when it kills them. The adaptable dare to step into chaos, trusting that they will build order within it. And adaptability requires vision, not a shallow vision tied to one method, but a deep vision tied to an ultimate purpose. Without vision, adaptability becomes drift. But with vision, adaptability becomes evolution. The reed bends not because it is aimless, but because its aim is survival. The adaptable man bends not because he lacks direction, but because he refuses to let his direction be destroyed by a storm. This is why you must focus on yourself until you win, not to build rigidity, but to build adaptability. Focus creates strength. Adaptability ensures survival. You must train yourself to let go of methods, but never of goals. To abandon strategies, but never of vision. To evolve, but never to betray purpose. History proves that adaptability multiplies resilience, multiplies discipline, multiplies action. Without adaptability, resilience becomes stubbornness, discipline becomes rigidity, action becomes repetition without progress. With adaptability, resilience becomes strategy, discipline becomes evolution, action becomes momentum. Think of the businesses, the inventions, the leaders who refuse to adapt. They are forgotten. Think of those who adapted, Amazon evolving from books to global commerce, Apple evolving from computers to technology ecosystems, nations that evolved with time, they endure. Adaptability is the true wealth, the true strength, the true immortality. And yet, adaptability is not easy. It demands death, the death of old identities, the death of outdated methods, the death of comfort. To adapt, you must be willing to let parts of yourself die so that greater parts can be born. The caterpillar must die for the butterfly to emerge. The old self must collapse for the new self to rise. Adaptability is not only survival, it is rebirth. So, ask yourself, are you adaptable? Or are you rigid? Do you cling to the past, to habits, to methods, to comfort? Or do you bend, shift, evolve, expand? When storms come, and they will you break or will you bend? Chapter 11, Learning. The Infinite Ladder. Knowledge is the currency of eternity. Those who stop learning stop growing, those who stop growing begin dying, and those who die while still alive become invisible, forgotten, irrelevant. The greatest mistake a man can make is to believe he already knows enough. The moment you declare yourself finished, the world begins to pass you by. The moment you believe you have mastered it all, you are overtaken by those who remain students. For life is not static, it is fluid, and the only way to remain alive within it is to remain a learner until your final breath. Look across history. Every giant, every builder, every conqueror of destiny was first a student, and even when they became masters, they remained students still. Andrew Carnegie, the boy born into poverty, did not have access to wealth, privilege, or elite tutors. He had access only to books. And so he read them. He consumed them. He made knowledge his ladder out of obscurity. He studied economics, philosophy, history, industry. He turned every page into a rung, and rung by rung, he climbed until he stood at the summit of industry. Abraham Lincoln, too, was forged in learning. Born with nothing, raised in the wilderness of hardship, he carved his mind with books borrowed, speeches studied, wisdom devoured in the dim light of a fire. He read law by candlelight, studied rhetoric until he could command crowds, devoured history until he could see himself within its flow. His greatness was not an accident. It was the direct result of relentless learning. Thomas Edison never stopped learning. He treated failure as a teacher, experiments as lessons, life as a classroom that never closed. Every mistake gave him knowledge, and every piece of knowledge became a tool in his arsenal. He did not collapse under the weight of failure because failure was not failure to him. It was feedback, a lecture, an instruction. He remained a student of reality itself, and that endless hunger made him a fountain of invention. Walt Disney, too, was a student until his final day. He studied art, then storytelling, then business, then technology. When animation evolved, he learned. When sound was born, he learned. When television rose, he learned. When parks became his obsession, he learned everything from architecture to urban planning. He did not cling to the knowledge of yesterday, he devoured the knowledge of tomorrow. That is why his creations remain timeless, because he was never finished learning. And Henry Ford, his genius was not simply mechanical. He learned from industries outside his own. He studied meatpacking plants, learned efficiency from unexpected places, borrowed principles from one world and applied them to another. He was not too proud to learn from what others ignored. His openness to learn across boundaries gave him the power to revolutionize industry. This is the law: learning multiplies everything. It multiplies discipline, because discipline without wisdom is wasted. It multiplies resilience, because resilience without lessons is just repetition of suffering. It multiplies action, because action without knowledge becomes chaos. It multiplies adaptability, because only those who learn can adapt. Learning is the infinite ladder, the one you climb forever. There is no summit. The moment you stop climbing, you begin descending. The man who continues to learn expands his world, sharpens his mind, strengthens his soul. The man who stops learning shrinks, dulls, weakens. But learning is not easy. It requires humility. The arrogant cannot learn, for they believe they already know. The proud cannot learn, for they are too ashamed to admit ignorance. But ignorance admitted is ignorance defeated. Ignorance denied is ignorance eternal. The greats were humble enough to say, "I do not know, but I will learn." Lincoln admitted his lack of formal education, but he refused to remain uneducated. Carnegie admitted his poverty, but he refused to remain ignorant. Edison admitted his failures, but he refused to remain defeated. Disney admitted his weaknesses, but he refused to remain limited. Ford admitted his lack of knowledge in some fields, but he refused to remain uninformed. Humility opened the door to learning, and learning opened the door to greatness. Learning also requires hunger. Casual curiosity is not enough. You must devour knowledge with intensity, with obsession, with fire. Carnegie read as if his life depended on it, because it did. Lincoln studied as if his destiny depended on it, because it did. Edison experimented as if progress depended on it, because it did. Disney consumed stories, art, culture, as if his dreams depended on it, because they did. And Ford studied systems as if the future of industry depended on it, because it did. The hunger for knowledge is not a hobby, it is survival. Learning requires action. Knowledge untested remains theory. Knowledge applied becomes power. Edison did not simply study science, he tested it. Lincoln did not simply study law, he practiced it. Carnegie did not simply read economics, he built industries. Disney did not simply study storytelling, he created films. Ford did not simply study efficiency, he built machines. Learning without application is hoarding. Learning with action is transformation. But learning also requires patience. Knowledge compounds over time. A single book may not transform you. A single lesson may not elevate you. But book upon book, lesson upon lesson, day upon day, the mind becomes sharper, the vision becomes clearer, the soul becomes stronger. Knowledge compounds as surely as wealth, and the man who invests daily becomes rich in wisdom. The tragedy of modern times is that people mistake information for learning. They scroll, they skim, they consume endlessly but without depth. They gather fragments of knowledge but never master it, never apply it, never embody it. True learning is not shallow consumption. It is deep assimilation. It is not reading more, it is understanding more. It is not hearing facts, it is living truth. True learning demands reflection. Knowledge without reflection is noise. But when you reflect, when you meditate, when you connect ideas, knowledge becomes wisdom. Lincoln reflected on law and history until he could speak words that moved nations. Edison reflected on experiments until failure revealed secrets. Disney reflected on stories until imagination became universal. Ford reflected on efficiency until it became revolution. Learning without reflection is addition. Learning with reflection is multiplication. And so, if you would focus on yourself until you win, commit to becoming a lifelong learner. Do not settle for what you know today. Do not cling to what you learned yesterday. Expand, grow, devour, reflect, apply. Never stop climbing the infinite ladder. Understand this: your enemies are not just failure and fear. Your greatest enemy is ignorance. Ignorance of yourself, ignorance of your craft, ignorance of the world. Defeat ignorance daily, not by pretending you know, but by learning what you do not. Every page, every lesson, every conversation, every mistake. These are rungs on the ladder. Climb them. Chapter 12, Gratitude. The power that expands the soul. Gratitude is often mistaken for something soft, something delicate, a polite courtesy whispered before meals or written on greeting cards. But true gratitude is not shallow courtesy, it is raw power. It is the foundation upon which strength stands, the shield against despair, the antidote to arrogance, the lens that transforms suffering into growth and scarcity into wealth. Gratitude is not weakness. Gratitude is the steel of the soul. Without it, men grow bitter, blind, empty, no matter how high they climb. With it, even the poorest man becomes rich, even the most wounded man becomes strong, even the most defeated man finds reason to rise again. Consider Abraham Lincoln. He carried grief like a constant companion. He buried children, endured betrayal, tasted failure more than success. And yet, even in despair, Lincoln found gratitude, not for the pain itself, but for the meaning it revealed, for the lessons it carved into his soul, for the chance to serve something greater than his own wounds. Gratitude did not erase his suffering, it gave him strength to carry it. That strength made him immortal. Andrew Carnegie, the boy who labored in poverty, could have drowned in bitterness, could have cursed the world for its cruelty. Instead, he chose gratitude, for books, for mentors, for every opportunity, no matter how small. That gratitude sharpened his hunger, gave him the strength to endure, and later guided his decision to give away his wealth. For Carnegie understood that gratitude not expressed is not gratitude at all, it is debt. His philanthropy was gratitude made action, gratitude multiplied into legacy. Thomas Edison's thousands of failures could have turned into resentment, anger, despair. But Edison reframed every failure with gratitude. "I have not failed," he said, "I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Gratitude allowed him to see failure not as an ending but as progress. Without gratitude, his persistence would have died. With gratitude, his resilience became unbreakable. Walt Disney faced rejection, bankruptcy, betrayal. Yet he chose gratitude, not shallow optimism, but deep recognition that even failure had value, even rejection was fuel, even obstacles were teachers. Gratitude allowed him to see opportunity where others saw ruin, imagination where others saw absurdity. Gratitude gave him the courage to rebuild, again and again, until his vision conquered the world. Henry Ford, too, lived with gratitude. He was not blind to criticism, not untouched by failure, not immune to mistakes. But Ford chose gratitude for lessons, gratitude for struggle, gratitude for the chance to build something greater than himself. That gratitude gave him humility to learn and courage to innovate. Gratitude is not simply about feeling thankful, it is about transforming perspective. The ungrateful man sees only what is missing. The grateful man sees what is present and multiplies it. Gratitude is not blindness to hardship, it is clarity that hardship itself can be the raw material of greatness. Think of the farmer. He plants seeds. Rain comes, storms come, drought comes. The ungrateful farmer curses the sky, grows bitter, and his hands weaken. The grateful farmer endures, learns, adapts, and gives thanks for every drop of rain, every lesson of drought, every harvest gained. In the end, the grateful farmer thrives, not because his life was easier, but because his soul was stronger. Gratitude is discipline. It is not always natural to be grateful in suffering, grateful in failure, grateful in loss. But it is precisely in those moments that gratitude becomes power. Anyone can be grateful when life is abundant. But when life is brutal, when storms tear at your soul, when the world seems to collapse, choosing gratitude then is an act of defiance, a declaration of resilience. Gratitude in darkness is not weakness. It is rebellion. History remembers men who carried gratitude not as a polite word but as a way of life. Lincoln's gratitude gave him perspective. Carnegie's gratitude gave him generosity. Edison's gratitude gave him persistence. Disney's gratitude gave him imagination. Ford's gratitude gave him humility. Gratitude transformed their struggles into strength and their victories into legacies. Gratitude is also the antidote to arrogance. Success intoxicates. Wealth blinds. Power corrupts. The man who forgets gratitude believes he built his life alone, believes he owes nothing to anyone, believes himself a god. And arrogance always precedes collapse. Gratitude humbles the soul, reminding even the great that they are not alone, that they are part of something larger, that their victories are built not only on their strength but on the shoulders of others, on the gifts of life itself. Gratitude expands perspective. The ungrateful man shrinks his world to his problems. The grateful man expands his world to include blessings, lessons, opportunities. Gratitude enlarges the soul until it can endure storms without breaking. And gratitude multiplies joy. Wealth without gratitude becomes greed. Success without gratitude becomes emptiness. Power without gratitude becomes tyranny. But gratitude transforms wealth into generosity, success into fulfillment, power into service. Gratitude is the difference between a man who dies rich but empty, and a man who dies remembered, honored, immortal. Gratitude also strengthens resilience. When you are grateful even for struggle, struggle loses power to destroy you. When you are grateful even for failure, failure loses power to define you. When you are grateful even for betrayal, betrayal loses power to poison you. Gratitude disarms the weapons of despair. But gratitude must be practiced. It is not enough to feel it in moments of abundance, you must train it daily. Lincoln practiced gratitude for small victories. Carnegie practiced gratitude for books. Edison practiced gratitude for lessons. Disney practiced gratitude for imagination. Ford practiced gratitude for opportunity. Gratitude is not found, it is forged. So how do you forge it? You begin by noticing. Notice the small blessings you ignore. Notice the lessons hidden in pain. Notice the opportunities disguised as obstacles. Gratitude is born in awareness. You continue by expressing. Speak it. Write it. Act it. Gratitude unexpressed is like a seed never planted. Express it and it grows. Finally, you live it. Gratitude is not words alone. It is the way you treat others, the way you serve, the way you give. And so, if you would focus on yourself until you win, cultivate gratitude as fiercely as you cultivate discipline, resilience, and action. Gratitude will protect you from arrogance, sustain you in hardship, magnify your victories, and transform your failures. Because in the end, gratitude is the secret wealth, the hidden strength, the eternal perspective. The ungrateful may achieve, but they die empty. The grateful may suffer, but they live full. And when their lives are complete, it is gratitude that makes their names shine across centuries. Be grateful not only for the light but for the darkness that shaped you. Be grateful not only for victories but for defeats that taught you. Be grateful not only for abundance but for scarcity that sharpened you. For gratitude transforms everything, and the man who carries it cannot be broken. Chapter 13, Faith. The unseen engine of victory. There are forces in life you can see, touch, measure, and control. And then there are forces invisible, untouchable, immeasurable, yet more powerful than any visible weapon. Faith is one of those forces. Faith is the unseen engine of victory. Faith is the power that whispers move forward when logic says stop. Faith is the strength that tells you rise again when evidence screams you are finished. Faith is the belief in things not yet visible, in futures not yet built, in triumphs not yet won. Without faith, discipline crumbles, resilience weakens, vision fades. With faith, even the smallest man can move mountains, even the weakest soul can rise into greatness, Even the most broken life can be remade into legend. Faith is not blind ignorance. Faith is not wishful thinking. Faith is not naive denial of reality. Faith is a higher reality. Faith does not ignore facts, it transcends them. Faith does not erase obstacles, it sees beyond them. Faith does not eliminate pain, it gives pain purpose. Faith is not fantasy, it is fuel. Look at Abraham Lincoln. Logic told him to quit. History told him he was finished. Every defeat screamed that his destiny was nothing but failure. Yet faith told him otherwise. Faith told him that even if his present was filled with loss, his future could be filled with purpose. Faith told him that even if he was broken, he could rise to heal a nation. That faith carried him through storms that would have ended lesser men. Without faith, there is no Lincoln the Liberator. With faith, there is a Lincoln whose name will echo until the end of time. Andrew Carnegie had faith, not faith in blind chance, but faith in growth, faith in learning, faith that every book he read, every lesson he learned, every sacrifice he endured would one day bear fruit. Faith told him that poverty was not destiny, that obscurity was not the end of his story. Faith told him that knowledge was the ladder out of darkness, and so he climbed it. Faith carried him from factory boy to titan, from obscurity to immortality. Thomas Edison's life was an anthem to faith. Imagine failing not once, not 10 times, not 100, but 1,000. Imagine being ridiculed in newspapers, mocked by peers, dismissed by experts. Imagine every piece of evidence around you telling you to stop. Logic would have quit. Pride would have quit. Doubt would have quit. But faith did not quit. Faith told Edison that light was possible, that progress was possible, that his vision was not madness but destiny. Faith gave him strength to rise after every failure until the world itself bowed before his persistence. Walt Disney's faith was audacity in its purest form. Who else could look at empty fields and imagine castles? Who else could look at drawings and imagine kingdoms? Who else could be betrayed, bankrupted, mocked, and still believe that his dream was real? Faith told him that imagination could change the world. Faith told him that wonder could be built into stone, that joy could be carved into reality. And because of that faith, children for generations have lived inside his dream. And Henry Ford, his faith was relentless. He faced rejection, ridicule, ruin, and still he believed. Faith told him that ordinary men deserved extraordinary tools. Faith told him that efficiency could change the world. Faith told him that his failures were not his identity. And so, even when the world said no, his faith kept whispering yes. That whisper built an industry that reshaped civilization. Faith is not passive. Faith is active. Faith is not simply belief, it is belief expressed in movement. Faith is building even when the ground is uncertain. Faith is striking even when the target is hidden. Faith is moving forward when you cannot yet see the road. Faith is the architect of action, the fuel of discipline, the companion of resilience. But faith is also tested. Always tested. The moment you choose faith, the world will rise against it. You will be mocked. You will be doubted. You will be told you are insane. And every storm, every failure, every betrayal will attempt to crush your faith. That is why so few carry it to the end, because faith demands endurance. Faith demands resilience. Faith demands the courage to look foolish in the present in order to become immortal in the future. Faith requires vision. Without vision, faith has no target. With vision, faith becomes unstoppable. Faith says, I see the mountain, and even when storms rage, faith keeps climbing. Faith requires purpose. Without purpose, faith drifts into fantasy. With purpose, faith becomes fire. Faith says, I know why I am here, and even when the world collapses, faith keeps standing. Faith requires gratitude. Without gratitude, faith becomes arrogance. With gratitude, faith becomes humility. Faith says, I am blessed even in hardship, and hardship loses its power. Faith requires learning. Without learning, faith becomes ignorance. With learning, faith becomes wisdom. Faith says, I will study, I will prepare, I will build, and knowledge multiplies its power. But above all, faith requires courage. Faith is not easy. Faith is not safe. Faith is not comfortable. Faith demands that you walk when you cannot see the ground. Faith demands that you speak when your voice shakes. Faith demands that you rise when your body is broken. Faith demands that you act when your doubts scream louder than your courage. That is why faith is rare. That is why faith is powerful. That is why faith is the dividing line between those who live ordinary lives and those who carve eternal legacies. History proves this again and again. Greatness is never born in certainty. It is born in faith. The men who changed the world did not know the outcome. They did not have guarantees. They did not have certainty. They had faith. Faith that the unseen could become seen. Faith that the impossible could become possible. Faith that destiny would bend to the will of those who refused to stop believing. And so, if you would focus on yourself until you win, you must build faith. Not shallow faith in empty words, but deep faith in your vision, your purpose, your resilience, your destiny. Build faith that carries you when your strength fails. Build faith that guides you when the map disappears. Build faith that sustains you when every voice tells you to quit. Because in the end, faith is not just belief. Faith is survival. Faith is not just hope. Faith is strategy. Faith is not just comfort. Faith is courage. And faith is the one force that can take a man who has nothing and transform him into a man who leaves everything behind. Be like Lincoln, carry faith through despair. Be like Carnegie, carry faith through poverty. Be like Edison, carry faith through failure. Be like Disney, carry faith through ridicule. Be like Ford, carry faith through rejection. Carry faith until the unseen becomes seen, until the impossible becomes real, until your life itself becomes the proof that faith is the greatest engine of victory. Chapter 14, Patience, the silent power behind all greatness. Patience is not weakness. Patience is not passivity. Patience is not surrender. Patience is power, quiet, invisible, underestimated, but more decisive than strength, more enduring than talent, more permanent than luck. Patience is the ability to endure time without collapsing. It is the capacity to remain unshaken when results delay, to remain faithful when evidence is absent, to remain disciplined when reward seems distant. Patience is the slow fire that tempers the steel of greatness, the silent power behind all monumental achievement. We live in an age intoxicated by speed. Everyone wants instant victories, instant wealth, instant recognition, instant transformation. But history whispers a different truth. Everything eternal is slow. Mountains are not raised overnight. Empires are not built in a week. Character is not forged in a moment. True greatness requires time, and only the patient endure long enough to see it. Abraham Lincoln embodied patience. His rise to immortality was not swift, it was painfully slow. He lost more elections than he won. He endured humiliation after humiliation. He was doubted, dismissed, ridiculed. But Lincoln carried patience as his armor. He endured delay without surrender, carried defeats without collapse, waited for his moment without bitterness. And when his moment came, he was ready, not because he was the most brilliant, not because he was the most powerful, but because patience had refined him until he was unbreakable. Andrew Carnegie, too, carried patience. He did not become a titan in a year. He worked for decades, climbing from poverty into prosperity step by step, opportunity by opportunity, book by book, decision by decision. Patience made him relentless. He did not demand harvest before planting. He did not demand fruit before roots. He waited, he endured, he compounded his effort, and over time, patience turned his hunger into empires. Thomas Edison's patience was legendary. Imagine the monotony of failure, thousands of failed experiments, thousands of hours wasted, or so it seemed. Any man without patience would have surrendered long before victory. But Edison understood that invention is slow, that progress resists haste, that discovery is the reward of endurance. Patience gave him the strength to fail endlessly without despair, to persist endlessly without reward, to wait until light itself bowed before him. Walt Disney's patience shaped kingdoms. His dreams were vast, but his reality was filled with delay, rejection, and betrayal. He spent years rebuilding after bankruptcy, years pitching ideas no one believed in, years waiting for others to catch up to his imagination. But Disney endured, not with idle waiting, but with active patience, working, building, sketching, trying again while the world doubted. Patience was his weapon, the silent fire that carried him through storms until wonder itself became a kingdom. And Henry Ford. His vision was massive, but his road was long. He failed repeatedly before the Model T. He faced rejection, collapse, humiliation. But patience made him dangerous. He waited, refined, rebuilt, endured, until the day came when his machine reshaped civilization. Without patience, Ford would have been forgotten. With it, he became eternal. Patience is misunderstood because it looks quiet. It looks passive. But patience is not the absence of action. It is the endurance of action without the addiction to immediate results. Impatience acts, then quits when results delay. Patience acts, and acts again, whether results come today, tomorrow, or years from now. Impatience is weak because it collapses in waiting. Patience is strong because it endures through waiting. Patience multiplies every other virtue. Discipline without patience collapses into frustration. Resilience without patience collapses into bitterness. Action without patience collapses into exhaustion. Vision without patience collapses into despair. Purpose without patience collapses into futility. But with patience, discipline becomes sustainable, resilience becomes unbreakable, action becomes unstoppable, vision becomes inevitable, purpose becomes immortal. Patience is the silent partner of time. Time is undefeated, none can fight it, none can stop it. But patience allies with it. Patience does not resist time. Patience harnesses it. The impatient are slaves of time. The patient are masters of it. Consider nature. A seed is planted. The impatient dig it up after a week, crying that nothing has grown. The patient water, wait, nurture, and in time, the seed becomes a tree. The impatient demand harvest without planting, fruit without roots, reward without work. The patient sow in faith, endure in silence, wait in discipline, and when the harvest comes, it is abundant beyond imagination. This is why so many fail, not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lacked patience. They quit too soon. They surrendered before the breakthrough. They gave up in the waiting. They collapsed in the silence between effort and reward. The impatient live lives of half-built dreams, abandoned projects, unfinished legacies. The patient endure until the impossible becomes inevitable. But patience is not easy. Patience requires faith, the faith to believe that unseen roots are growing. Patience requires humility, the humility to accept that greatness cannot be rushed. Patience requires courage, the courage to endure seasons of obscurity without bitterness. Patience requires resilience, the resilience to continue without applause. Patience requires discipline, the discipline to act consistently even when reward is delayed. Lincoln carried these. Carnegie carried these. Edison carried these. Disney carried these. Ford carried these. And that is why they endured where others quit. Patience is also strategy. The impatient rush into battles unprepared, wasting energy, losing wars. The patient prepare, wait, choose their moment, and strike with precision. The impatient demand doors to open immediately. The patient build keys. The impatient chase shortcuts that collapse. The patient build foundations that last. Patience is not just endurance, it is wisdom. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, cultivate patience. Do not demand harvest before its season. Do not demand reward before its time. Do not collapse in waiting. Act daily, endure delay, trust the process. Plant your seeds, water them with discipline, protect them with resilience, nourish them with faith, and wait. For the day will come when the harvest arrives, and it will be greater than you imagined. Because in the end, history does not reward the fastest. It rewards the most enduring. The impatient burn bright and die quickly. The patient burn slowly and light the world for generations. The impatient quit in silence and are forgotten. The patient endure in silence and are remembered forever. Patience is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not surrender. Patience is the silent power behind all greatness, the unseen force that turns vision into reality, the timeless weapon that transforms endurance into immortality. Chapter 15, Courage. The fire that burns through fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the mastery of it. Courage is not blindness to danger. Courage is the refusal to be enslaved by it. Courage is not recklessness. Courage is calculated defiance in the face of despair, determination in the face of risk, persistence in the face of terror. Without courage, discipline collapses under pressure, resilience withers in storms, vision retreats into fantasy, and action dissolves into hesitation. With courage, the impossible bends. With courage, mountains move. With courage, men and women step into eternity. Fear is universal. It comes for every man, every woman, in every age, in every generation. Fear of failure. Fear of ridicule. Fear of loss. Fear of rejection. Fear of death itself. Fear is the oldest enemy, the most consistent adversary. But fear is also a liar. Fear magnifies shadows, whispers weakness, paints illusions. Fear thrives on inaction. It feeds on hesitation. It multiplies in silence. The man who refuses to act because of fear will never escape it. The man who acts despite fear discovers that fear shrinks, retreats, collapses in the presence of movement. That is why courage is essential, not because it erases fear, but because it silences fear's power. The courageous man feels fear but moves anyway. The courageous woman trembles but rises anyway. The courageous leader doubts but decides anyway. Courage is not comfort. Courage is not calm. Courage is fire in the storm. Look at Abraham Lincoln. He was not fearless. He knew the risks, the dangers, the weight of his choices. He faced threats to his life, hatred from his enemies, ridicule from his critics. He faced the possibility of failure on a scale that would destroy not only his name but his nation. Fear was real, but courage was greater. Lincoln acted not because he was fearless, but because he was courageous. He stepped forward into storms knowing the cost, and because of that courage, the Union survived. Andrew Carnegie had courage, not the courage of the battlefield, but the courage to rise from nothing, the courage to compete against men born richer, the courage to risk, the courage to build. He faced ridicule as an immigrant boy, faced rejection in industries dominated by giants, faced the pressure of rising beyond his station. Fear could have enslaved him, but courage set him free. Courage told him, your past is not your destiny, your poverty is not your future, your struggle is not your sentence. That courage built empires. Thomas Edison's courage was the courage to fail endlessly. Most fear failure. Most surrender at the first defeat. Edison chose courage. He chose to risk ridicule. He chose to endure repeated collapse. He chose to stand in laboratories filled with broken experiments and still say, I will try again. Courage gave him persistence beyond imagination. Without courage, he would have quit after his first storm. With courage, he lit the world. Walt Disney's courage was imagination itself. It takes courage to dream when the world laughs. It takes courage to imagine castles when you live in bankruptcy. It takes courage to believe in joy when your reality is despair. Disney had courage to risk it all, again and again, for ideas others called foolish. Courage to persist when banks closed their doors. Courage to rebuild when betrayal cut deep. Courage to sketch kingdoms while others mocked. And because of that courage, his dreams live beyond him, eternal. Henry Ford's courage was defiance. He was told it could not be done. He was told ordinary men would never afford cars. He was told his vision was madness. Fear could have silenced him. But courage gave him defiance. Courage made him rise against experts, against ridicule, against endless failures. Courage gave him the power to keep building until his vision reshaped the world. Courage is not only for leaders of nations, builders of empires, inventors of light, dreamers of kingdoms. Courage is for you. For your battles, your struggles, your storms. Courage is not abstract. Courage is practical. Courage is choosing to rise in the morning when depression tells you to stay in bed. Courage is choosing to speak when silence would be safer. Courage is choosing to act when hesitation feels easier. Courage is choosing to believe when doubt feels louder. Courage is choosing to continue when quitting feels justified. And courage is contagious. One act of courage multiplies. When Lincoln stood, others stood. When Carnegie rose, others rose. When Edison persisted, others persisted. When Disney dreamed, others dreamed. When Ford defied, others defied. Courage ignites courage. One spark can light an entire generation. But courage, like every virtue, must be trained. You do not suddenly become courageous in great trials if you have been a coward in small ones. Courage is built daily. Courage is built by facing small fears, enduring small storms, making small stands. Each act of courage strengthens the muscle until, when great trials come, you are ready. Courage also demands sacrifice. You cannot be courageous without risk. You cannot be courageous without loss. You cannot be courageous without pain. That is why so few are courageous, because they want safety, certainty, comfort. But greatness requires risk, and courage is the key to enduring it. Fear will always whisper. It will never disappear. But courage does not wait for fear to vanish. Courage moves despite fear. And in moving, it weakens fear's grip. History is proof. Every monument we see, every invention we use, every freedom we enjoy, was bought with courage. Without courage, there is no Lincoln's Gettysburg. Without courage, there is no Carnegie Steel. Without courage, there is no Edison Light. Without courage, there is no Disney Kingdom. Without courage, there is no Ford assembly line. Without courage, there is no progress at all. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, you must cultivate courage as relentlessly as discipline, resilience, patience, faith. For courage is the fire that burns through fear. Without courage, fear imprisons you. With courage, fear bows to you. And when your life is finished, the world will not remember how afraid you were. The world will not remember how many doubts you carried. The world will remember only that, in spite of them, you acted. That is courage. That is greatness. Chapter 16, Perseverance. The Endless March Toward Destiny. There is a difference between resilience and perseverance. Resilience is the ability to rise after being knocked down, to recover after defeat, to bounce back from storms. Perseverance is more relentless. Perseverance is not only the rising, but the endless marching forward, the refusal to stop moving no matter how many times the world throws you into the dust. Perseverance is the commitment to walk, crawl, bleed, and crawl again if you must, until destiny itself yields to your endurance. It is not a single rise. It is the lifetime of rising. History is a graveyard of those who quit too soon, and a crown of those who persevered. The dividing line is not always talent, not always intelligence, not always opportunity, it is perseverance. The willingness to continue when others collapse, the refusal to quit when everything screams to surrender. Abraham Lincoln persevered through a lifetime of defeat, business failures, political defeats, personal tragedies, depression so deep it nearly devoured him. Any one of these storms could have ended him. But Lincoln persevered. Not once. Not twice. And his perseverance carried him into the presidency at a moment when the world itself seemed to collapse. Had he quit at any point, history would have buried him in silence. Because he persevered, history crowned him eternal. Andrew Carnegie persevered not only through poverty but through the brutal climb of industry. The boy who worked in factories, who had nothing, who faced barriers of class and wealth, persevered through decades of toil. He persevered in learning, in building, in enduring opposition, until steel itself bowed before him. His perseverance built an empire, and later his perseverance in philanthropy built libraries, universities, and legacies that endure. Thomas Edison persevered more visibly than any man of his age. He failed and failed and failed again, thousands of times. But Edison did not count failure as the end, He counted it as progress. His perseverance transformed endless defeat into eventual triumph. Perseverance was not an occasional act for Edison, it was his very identity. Walt Disney persevered through ridicule, betrayal, bankruptcy. He persevered when banks slammed their doors, when critics mocked him, when projects collapsed. He persevered when his own animators rebelled, when his dreams seemed impossible. And because he persevered, the worlds he imagined became worlds we now inhabit. Henry Ford persevered through collapse after collapse, through rejection after rejection. He persevered until his vision took shape, until machines rolled across streets, until his assembly line changed civilization. Ford's genius was not only invention, it was perseverance, the refusal to stop when every failure told him to quit. Perseverance is more than resilience. Resilience rises after a fall. Perseverance marches even while wounded. Resilience survives storms. Perseverance keeps sailing into them. Resilience recovers. Perseverance endures forever. Perseverance is not glorious. It is not glamorous. It is not celebrated in the moment. Perseverance is bloody, dirty, exhausting, often invisible. It looks like a man alone in the night, working while the world sleeps. It looks like a woman rising after another failure, carrying scars no one sees. It looks like silence, obscurity, anonymity. But perseverance transforms silence into legacy, obscurity into history, anonymity into immortality. The impatient collapse because results delay. The weak surrender because progress feels slow. The arrogant quit because recognition is absent. But the persevering endure delay, endure slowness, endure invisibility. And in time, the world sees them not as fools but as legends. Perseverance multiplies everything. Vision without perseverance dies as fantasy. Discipline without perseverance collapses in fatigue. Resilience without perseverance fades after too many storms. Action without perseverance becomes wasted effort. Perseverance is the fuel that ensures all other virtues last. Without it, everything collapses. With it, everything survives. Consider Rome. The empire was not built by one battle. It was built by centuries of perseverance, generation after generation refusing to stop, continuing to march, continuing to expand, continuing to endure. Perseverance created empires, and perseverance sustains civilizations. Consider science. No great discovery came in a moment. It came in decades, in centuries of perseverance, in men and women carrying forward experiments they did not finish, visions they did not see completed. Perseverance is the chain that links generations, the reason knowledge accumulates, the reason progress advances. And consider your life. How many dreams have you abandoned not because they were impossible, but because you stopped too soon? How many victories slipped away not because you lacked talent, but because you lacked perseverance? How many moments of greatness never came because you quit in the silence before breakthrough? Perseverance is the bridge across that silence. Perseverance requires faith, faith that your effort will matter, even when evidence says otherwise. Perseverance requires courage, courage to endure ridicule, obscurity, exhaustion. Perseverance requires patience, patience to endure delay, to accept that greatness is slow. Perseverance requires resilience, resilience to rise again and again. But perseverance is greater still, because perseverance is not a single act, it is a lifetime. And perseverance is contagious. When one man perseveres, he shows others that endurance is possible. Lincoln's perseverance gave a nation courage. Edison's perseverance gave an industry courage. Disney's perseverance gave generations courage. Ford's perseverance gave dreamers courage. Carnegie's perseverance gave strugglers courage. Your perseverance, too, can ignite perseverance in others. So if you would focus on yourself until you win, you must commit not to a moment but to a lifetime. You must swear not only to rise once, not only to endure one storm, but to keep rising, to keep enduring, until your final breath. Perseverance is not optional. Perseverance is destiny. Because in the end, the world does not belong to the strongest, or the fastest, or the most talented. The world belongs to those who never stopped. Chapter 17, Sacrifice, the Price of Immortality. Every man speaks of success, of greatness, of legacy. Few speak of sacrifice. Yet sacrifice is the hidden currency with which destiny is purchased. Nothing eternal is built without it. Nothing immortal is forged without it. Sacrifice is the blood tithe of greatness, the price of immortality. You cannot hold both comfort and destiny. You cannot cling to safety and rise into eternity. You cannot live for ease and live for legacy. Sacrifice demands choice, and those who choose sacrifice inherit the world. Sacrifice is not destruction. Sacrifice is exchange. It is the giving up of something lesser for something greater. It is the surrender of comfort for conviction, of pleasure for purpose, of temporary ease for eternal impact. The man who refuses to sacrifice clings to little and remains little. The man who embraces sacrifice releases what is small to grasp what is vast. Abraham Lincoln sacrificed peace for principle. He could have chosen silence, compromise, ease. He could have preserved his own comfort while the nation burned. But Lincoln chose sacrifice. He bore hatred, carried despair, endured loneliness, surrendered personal happiness to preserve freedom. His sacrifice cost him his life. But in that cost, he purchased liberty for millions and a legacy for centuries. Andrew Carnegie sacrificed ease for hunger. As a boy, he could have resigned himself to poverty. He could have surrendered to despair. But he sacrificed comfort for learning, sacrificed rest for work, sacrificed leisure for books. Later, when wealth was his, he sacrificed possession for purpose, giving away what he had spent a lifetime building. His sacrifices built libraries, schools, institutions that still teach the world. Thomas Edison sacrificed rest, sacrificed comfort, sacrificed normalcy. He lived in his laboratory, often forgetting sleep, often forgetting meals, surrendering all to invention. His sacrifice was endless failure, endless ridicule. But in sacrificing his comfort, he gave the world light. Walt Disney sacrificed financial security, sacrificed reputation, sacrificed certainty. Again and again he poured everything into visions others dismissed as madness. He sacrificed the approval of critics, the stability of his finances, the comfort of safety. And from that sacrifice rose kingdoms of imagination that live on. Henry Ford sacrificed reputation, sacrificed respectability, sacrificed safety. He was mocked, dismissed, ridiculed. He risked everything on visions others could not see. He sacrificed years of his life to experiment, to refine, to fail, to build. His sacrifices became revolutions that reshaped the modern world. Sacrifice is not only for titans of history. Sacrifice is for you. If you would build greatness, you must sacrifice. Sacrifice time wasted on distraction. Sacrifice energy wasted on the approval of others. Sacrifice comfort that chains you to mediocrity. Sacrifice excuses that imprison you. Sacrifice the easy path for the worthy one. Without sacrifice, purpose remains fantasy. Without sacrifice, discipline becomes shallow. Without sacrifice, resilience collapses under weight. Without sacrifice, vision dies in comfort. Sacrifice is the proof of desire. Anyone can claim purpose. Anyone can speak a vision. Anyone can dream. But only sacrifice proves belief. The farmer sacrifices his seed into the ground, trusting that in death it will multiply into harvest. The soldier sacrifices safety, sometimes life, for the freedom of others. The leader sacrifices popularity for principle. The builder sacrifices years for a vision unseen. The dreamer sacrifices sleep for creation. The parent sacrifices comfort for the future of their child. Every legacy is built on sacrifice. Sacrifice is misunderstood. The world sees only what is lost. The wise see what is gained. Sacrifice is never subtraction. It is multiplication. The man who sacrifices time for learning gains wisdom. The man who sacrifices money for investment gains wealth. The man who sacrifices comfort for growth gains strength. The man who sacrifices himself for others gains immortality. But sacrifice is painful. It burns. It wounds. It demands more than you think you can give. That is why so few embrace it. That is why so few are great. The coward clings to ease. The arrogant refuse to give. The selfish hoard. And history forgets them. The brave give. The humble release. The selfless surrender. And history remembers them forever. Sacrifice also requires vision. Without vision, sacrifice feels meaningless. With vision, sacrifice becomes sacred. Lincoln's sacrifice was fueled by vision of freedom. Carnegie's sacrifice was fueled by vision of education. Edison's sacrifice was fueled by vision of progress. Disney's sacrifice was fueled by vision of wonder. Ford's sacrifice was fueled by vision of mobility. Sacrifice without vision is waste. Sacrifice with vision is legacy. And sacrifice requires faith. You must believe that what you give will yield something greater. The farmer must believe the buried seed will rise. The builder must believe the years of labor will yield a city. The leader must believe the pain endured will yield a nation. Without faith, sacrifice collapses into despair. With faith, sacrifice becomes destiny. So how do you cultivate sacrifice? You begin with choice. Choose what matters more than comfort. Choose what matters more than pleasure. Choose what matters more than safety. Then, when the moment comes, surrender what is lesser. Give it up. Pay the price. Sacrifice is not random, it is chosen. Understand this. The measure of your greatness will be the measure of your sacrifice. Small sacrifices yield small results. Great sacrifices yield great results. Lincoln gave his life. Carnegie gave his fortune. Edison gave his strength. Disney gave his security. Ford gave his years. And in return, they gained immortality. And so, if you would focus on yourself until you win, you must embrace sacrifice. You must surrender what is small to gain what is great. You must release comfort to seize destiny. You must lay down ease to rise into eternity. Because in the end, history will not remember what you kept. History will remember what you gave. Chapter 18, Legacy, Building What Time Cannot Erase. Every man dies. Every woman dies. Death comes for kings and beggars, for conquerors and the conquered, for builders and the broken. No one escapes the silence of the grave. But though death is certain, oblivion is not. For there is a force greater than death, legacy. Legacy is the echo that lives after your voice is gone, the shadow that endures when your body is dust, the monument of your choices, your sacrifices, your vision, and your perseverance. Legacy is immortality earned. To live without legacy is to vanish. To live with legacy is to endure. The question is not whether you will die. The question is whether your life will matter after you are gone. Look at Abraham Lincoln. His body was buried, his voice silenced, his eyes closed. Yet Lincoln still speaks. His words echo in classrooms, his courage inspires leaders, his sacrifice shapes nations. But because his legacy was larger than his life, he did not live only for himself. He lived for freedom, for unity, for principles greater than comfort. His legacy is immortal because it was paid for with blood, sacrifice, and conviction. Andrew Carnegie is gone. His factories no longer roar with steel. But his legacy endures, not in wealth hoarded, but in wealth given. His libraries still stand, his universities still teach, his vision of education still shapes generations. Carnegie understood that to die rich was disgrace, and so he turned his fortune into a river that still flows. His legacy outlived him because he invested not in possessions but in people. Thomas Edison's body decayed, but his light still burns. Every bulb, every invention, every progress of technology carries his fingerprint. Edison's legacy is not in the wealth he accumulated but in the impact he unleashed. He transformed darkness into light, silence into sound, stillness into motion. His legacy is the illumination of the world itself. Walt Disney is gone. His laughter is silent, his sketches complete. But his legacy expands still. His imagination still delights children, still inspires dreamers, still builds kingdoms of wonder. Disney's legacy was not cartoons, it was belief in imagination itself. He proved that joy could be built, that wonder could be engineered, that dreams could live beyond the dreamer. Henry Ford is buried. His heart no longer beats. But his legacy moves still. Every road filled with cars, every factory that hums with efficiency, every life made freer by mobility carries Ford's vision. His legacy was not machines. It was empowerment. He gave ordinary men and women the power to move, to connect, to expand. His assembly line changed more than industry, it changed humanity. Legacy is the true measure of life. Wealth fades. Power shifts. Fame evaporates. But legacy endures. Legacy is what you leave behind when everything else is taken. Legacy is built not by chance but by choice. Every day you carve it. Every decision, every sacrifice, every action shapes it. Legacy is not a single act. It is a lifetime of acts. Legacy is not built in comfort. It is built in storms. Legacy is not forged in ease. It is forged in fire. The tragedy of many is that they live only for themselves. They seek comfort, wealth, recognition, but they hoard it, they bury it, they waste it. And when they die, they vanish. Their names fade, their lives dissolve into silence. But those who live for legacy, who live for something beyond themselves, endure. Legacy demands vision. Without vision, your actions scatter and vanish. With vision, your actions align and endure. Lincoln's vision was freedom. Carnegie's vision was knowledge. Edison's vision was progress. Disney's vision was wonder. Ford's vision was empowerment. Vision fuels legacy. Legacy demands sacrifice. Without sacrifice, your legacy is shallow. With sacrifice, your legacy is eternal. Lincoln gave his life. Carnegie gave his wealth. Edison gave his comfort. Disney gave his security. Ford gave his years. They gave, and in giving they gained immortality. Legacy demands perseverance. Legacy is not built in moments but in lifetimes. Edison's failures could have erased him. Disney's bankruptcies could have silenced him. Lincoln's defeats could have buried him. Ford's rejections could have destroyed him. But perseverance carried them, and because they persevered, their legacy survived. Legacy demands courage. To live for legacy is to defy fear, to risk ridicule, to endure pain. The coward dies twice, once in life, once in obscurity. The courageous die once but live forever in legacy. And legacy demands humility. The arrogant live for their own name and are forgotten. The humble live for something greater and are remembered. Carnegie gave because he understood that legacy is not possession but contribution. Lincoln endured because he understood that legacy is not pride but service. Edison persisted because he understood that legacy is not recognition but progress. Disney built because he understood that legacy is not applause but wonder. Ford innovated because he understood that legacy is not dominance but empowerment. So, what will your legacy be? When your body is dust, when your voice is silent, what will remain? Will you vanish into oblivion, or will your life echo beyond death? Do not think legacy is only for presidents, inventors, industrialists, dreamers. Legacy is for everyone. A parent leaves legacy in a child. A teacher leaves legacy in a student. A leader leaves legacy in a people. A friend leaves legacy in a life touched. Legacy is not measured by scale. It is measured by impact. Legacy is built daily. In your words, in your actions, in your sacrifices. Legacy is built in how you treat others, in what you build, in what you give, in what you endure. Legacy is built not by accident but by intention. And legacy is urgent. Death does not delay. Time does not wait. Every day, your legacy is being written, whether by design or by neglect. Every choice is a sentence. Every act is a paragraph. Every year is a chapter. And one day your book will close. What story will it tell? So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, focus not only on what you gain but on what you leave. Focus not only on success but on significance. Focus not only on achievement but on impact. Because in the end, the question is not whether you will die, it is whether you will be forgotten. Be like Lincoln, leave a legacy of freedom, Be like Carnegie, leave a legacy of knowledge. Be like Edison, leave a legacy of progress. Be like Disney, leave a legacy of wonder. Be like Ford, leave a legacy of empowerment. And when your time comes, may your name live beyond your body, may your vision live beyond your eyes, may your fire live beyond your breath. For legacy is immortality, and immortality belongs to those who gave enough to deserve it. Chapter 19, Mastery, the relentless pursuit of excellence. Excellence is not an act. It is not a performance. It is not a single achievement. Excellence is a way of life, a relentless pursuit that never ends, a fire that never dies, a standard that rises higher every time it is met. Excellence is mastery, and mastery is the crown of the human spirit. Mastery does not come by talent alone. Talent is the seed. Mastery is the forest. Talent is potential. Mastery is realized destiny. Talent is given. Mastery is earned. Earned through discipline, through perseverance, through sacrifice, through endless repetition, through a devotion so deep it becomes identity. Abraham Lincoln mastered words. He was not born eloquent. He was not raised with privilege. He did not sit in the halls of universities. He carved his mind in silence, reading law by candlelight, reciting speeches to the trees, sharpening his voice until it could pierce the hearts of nations. By the time he stood at Gettysburg, his mastery was complete, not because of gift alone, but because of relentless practice, relentless refinement, relentless pursuit of excellence. Andrew Carnegie mastered industry. He was not given factories. He was not born into wealth. He mastered opportunity itself, mastered learning, mastered the art of seizing advantage. He studied relentlessly, calculated endlessly, adjusted constantly. He mastered the rhythm of steel, the economics of growth, the philosophy of wealth. His mastery transformed him from a factory boy to the architect of modern industry. Thomas Edison mastered failure. Others fled from it. He embraced it. Others collapsed beneath it. He fed on it. Edison understood that mastery is born not of perfection but of persistence, not of avoiding mistakes but of exhausting them until only truth remains. He mastered the laboratory as a battlefield, and his victories were not sudden, they were earned in the trenches of endless trial. Walt Disney mastered imagination. Imagination is common. Every child has it. But Disney turned imagination into craft, turned wonder into empire. He mastered storytelling, mastered animation, mastered business, mastered technology, mastered worlds unseen. His mastery was not a gift but an obsession that endured bankruptcy, betrayal, ridicule, until mastery itself crowned him with kingdoms. Henry Ford mastered efficiency. Machines existed before him. Cars existed before him. But Ford mastered the unseen rhythm of production, mastered the flow of labor, mastered the geometry of assembly. His mastery was not in invention alone but in optimization, in refining, in repeating until the impossible became inevitable. This is mastery. It is not given. It is built. It is not fast. It is slow. It is not easy. It is brutal. It is not glamorous. It is invisible. Mastery demands patience, demands endurance, demands humility, demands a devotion so absolute that the world calls it madness. Mastery requires humility because the proud cannot learn. The arrogant think they have arrived. The master knows he is never finished. The master remains a student until the last breath. Lincoln remained a student of words. Carnegie remained a student of economics. Edison remained a student of discovery. Disney remained a student of wonder. Ford remained a student of systems. Masters remain students forever. Mastery requires repetition. Not 100 repetitions. Not 1,000. Tens of thousands. Endless hours. Endless effort. The untrained quit in boredom. The master endures monotony until monotony itself becomes beauty. The violinist repeats scales. The athlete repeats drills. The inventor repeats experiments. The writer repeats drafts. The master is not distracted by novelty. He is consumed by repetition until repetition becomes revelation. Mastery requires sacrifice. You cannot master one thing while clinging to everything. You must release distractions, pleasures, comforts. You must give yourself wholly to the pursuit. Edison's sacrificed sleep. Lincoln's sacrificed leisure. Carnegie's sacrificed ease. Disney's sacrificed security. Ford's sacrificed reputation. Their mastery cost them everything, and in return, it gave them immortality. Mastery requires obsession. Ordinary effort yields ordinary results. Masters are not ordinary. Masters are consumed. Masters wake thinking of their craft. Masters sleep dreaming of their craft. Masters breathe, bleed, live their craft. The world calls it madness. History calls it genius. Mastery requires time. There are no shortcuts. There are no hacks. The impatient collapse. The enduring ascend. The master does not demand fruit in spring. The master waters roots in winter. The master endures seasons, years, decades. And when harvest comes, it is abundant beyond measure. And mastery requires courage. To devote your life to something is to risk ridicule, risk failure, risk obscurity. To give yourself wholly to a pursuit is to endure storms others will never face. The coward seeks safety. The master seeks greatness. The coward clings to comfort. The master clings to craft. Mastery is the difference between greatness that fades and greatness that endures. Many achieve once. Few achieve always. Many rise once. Few remain. Many flash. Few burn eternal. Mastery ensures that your greatness is not a moment but a lifetime. And mastery is contagious. When Lincoln mastered words, he lifted a nation. When Carnegie mastered industry, he lifted an economy. When Edison mastered invention, he lifted humanity. When Disney mastered imagination, he lifted spirits. When Ford mastered efficiency, he lifted lives. The master does not rise alone. His mastery multiplies into the world. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, do not aim for comfort, do not aim for recognition, do not aim for shallow success. Aim for mastery. Aim for excellence so relentless that mediocrity flees at your presence. Aim for a standard so high that history itself must bow. Because in the end, wealth fades. Power shifts. Fame evaporates. But mastery endures. Masters live forever, not because their bodies remain, but because their excellence is eternal. Be like Lincoln, master words. Be like Carnegie, master opportunity. Be like Edison, master persistence. Be like Disney, master imagination. Be like Ford, master efficiency. And above all, master yourself. For self-mastery is the crown of mastery, and without it, no other mastery can last. Chapter 20, Transformation, Becoming More Than You Are. Transformation is the essence of life. Everything changes. The seed becomes a tree. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly. The river carves valleys, the mountain crumbles into dust, the night turns to dawn. Change is inevitable. But transformation is intentional. Change happens to everyone. Transformation is chosen by few. Change is passive. Transformation is active. Change is forced. Transformation is embraced. And those who choose transformation, those who take the raw clay of who they are and shape it into something greater, become immortal. Transformation is not cosmetic. It is not surface. It is not the polishing of appearances. Transformation is the death of oneself and the birth of another. It is the destruction of old habits, old fears, old chains, and the creation of new strength, new vision, new identity. Transformation is not easy. It is violent. It is painful. It is sacrifice made flesh. But it is the only path to greatness. Abraham Lincoln transformed from obscurity to legend. Born in poverty, raised in hardship, beaten by failure, he transformed himself through relentless learning, relentless perseverance, relentless sacrifice. He was not born a liberator. He became one. He transformed his defeats into lessons, his grief into empathy, his despair into strength. And in the end, the man mocked as a failure became the man remembered as immortal. Andrew Carnegie transformed from a boy in factories into a titan of steel. His body was weak, his opportunities scarce, his world cruel. But he transformed himself through books, through knowledge, through discipline. He transformed poverty into wealth, ignorance into wisdom, greed into generosity. His legacy was not simply steel, it was transformation itself. Thomas Edison transformed failure into fuel. Thousands of experiments collapsed, thousands of attempts shattered. But Edison transformed defeat into discovery. He was not born an inventor of light. He became one by transforming his relationship with failure, by transforming pain into persistence, by transforming ridicule into resilience. Walt Disney transformed dreams into kingdoms. He was not the only dreamer, not the only artist. But Disney transformed imagination into reality, fantasy into stone, wonder into empire. He transformed betrayal into motivation, bankruptcy into foundation, ridicule into fire. His life was a river of transformation, and its current still carries generations. Henry Ford transformed industry itself. Machines existed. Factories existed. But Ford transformed inefficiency into order, scarcity into abundance, privilege into access. He transformed the very idea of production, and in doing so, he transformed the world. This is transformation. It is not reserved for the few. It is not limited to titans of history. It is for you. Your life can transform. Your habits can transform. Your mind can transform. Your destiny can transform. But transformation demands choice. It demands that you kill what is small to become what is great. It demands that you surrender comfort to gain growth. It demands that you abandon excuses to seize excellence. Transformation requires vision. Without vision, transformation collapses into drift. With vision, transformation becomes direction. Lincoln transformed because he saw freedom. Carnegie transformed because he saw knowledge. Edison transformed because he saw light. Disney transformed because he saw wonder. Ford transformed because he saw mobility. Vision fuels transformation. Transformation requires discipline. Without discipline, transformation is fantasy. With discipline, transformation is inevitable. Transformation is repetition, action, consistency. It is not one choice but 1,000. It is not one act but a lifetime. Transformation requires sacrifice. You cannot remain who you are and become who you must be. You must surrender comfort, pleasure, excuses. You must sacrifice old friends who chain you, old habits that weaken you, old patterns that destroy you. Transformation is painful because it is death, but in death, life is reborn. Transformation requires resilience. You will fail. You will stumble. You will collapse. But resilience allows you to rise again, and every rise is part of the transformation. Edison did not transform in success. He transformed in failure. Lincoln did not transform in triumph. He transformed in defeat. Disney did not transform in applause. He transformed in ridicule. Transformation requires faith. You must believe in what is not yet seen. You must believe in what you are not yet. You must believe in a future self greater than your present self. Faith fuels the patience to endure the slow fire of transformation. And transformation requires courage. To kill the old self is terrifying. To abandon the known for the unknown is terrifying. To leave comfort for greatness is terrifying. Courage is the weapon that slays fear so that transformation can live. But transformation is not instant. It is slow, invisible, frustrating. It feels like nothing is happening. It feels like endless effort with no result. The caterpillar waits in darkness before wings emerge. The seed waits underground before the tree rises. Transformation is hidden before it is revealed. The impatient quit in the dark. The persevering endure until dawn. Transformation is not linear. It is messy. It is failure, then progress, then failure again. It is chaos before order. It is weakness before strength. It is confusion before clarity. Transformation demands that you trust the process even when it feels like collapse. Transformation is also contagious. When one man transforms, others see what is possible. Lincoln's transformation inspired generations. Carnegie's transformation inspired immigrants and dreamers. Edison's transformation inspired inventors. Disney's transformation inspired artists. Ford's transformation inspired builders. Your transformation, too, can ignite transformation in others. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, you must embrace transformation. Do not cling to who you are. Kill who you are. Build who you must become. Transform your weakness into strength, your fear into courage, your doubt into faith, your comfort into discipline, your excuses into action. Because in the end, the question is not whether you will change, you will. Time will change you, circumstance will change you, life will change you. The question is whether you will transform with intention or decay by neglect. Will you rise into greatness, or will you wither into oblivion? Be like Lincoln, transform defeat into destiny. Be like Carnegie, transform poverty into purpose. Be like Edison, transform failure into fire. Be like Disney, transform imagination into empire. Be like Ford, transform vision into revolution. And above all, transform yourself until your very life becomes the proof that transformation is not only possible but unstoppable. For transformation is the only true immortality. Death ends the body. Transformation echoes forever. Chapter 21. Destiny. The summit beyond the struggle. Destiny is not fate. Fate is passive. Fate is surrender. Fate is the excuse of the weak. Destiny is active. Destiny is chosen. Destiny is forged. Destiny is the summit beyond the struggle, the peak carved by sweat, sacrifice, perseverance, discipline, faith, and courage. Destiny is not what happens to you, it is what you build from what happens to you. Every man and woman is born with potential, but potential is only clay. Left untouched, it decays into dust. Shaped with intention, it becomes sculpture. Carved with sacrifice, it becomes monument. Destiny is potential mastered. Destiny is clay transformed into stone, stone into cathedral, cathedral into eternity. Abraham Lincoln did not stumble into destiny. He was not born with crown or scepter. His life was failure, grief, poverty. Yet within those storms, he chose destiny. He chose to rise when others quit. He chose to speak when others silenced. He chose to act when others surrendered. Destiny was not given to Lincoln. He carved it, blow by blow, scar by scar, until the man mocked as a backwoods lawyer became the liberator of millions. Andrew Carnegie did not inherit destiny. He inherited poverty. His childhood was factories, hunger, exhaustion. But Carnegie chose destiny. He devoured books, seized opportunity, worked relentlessly. He transformed not because the world opened doors, but because he built them. And when he reached the summit, he did not hoard. He gave, turning his destiny into the destiny of generations. Thomas Edison faced ridicule, rejection, ruin. Destiny could have abandoned him. But Edison chose destiny. He refused to quit, refused to surrender, refused to believe that failure was final. He turned laboratories into battlefields, turned mistakes into victories, turned years of silence into an age of light. His destiny was not invention alone. It was proof that persistence creates miracles. Walt Disney dreamed of kingdoms no one else could see. He was betrayed, bankrupted, mocked. Yet Disney chose destiny. He kept drawing when others stopped. He kept dreaming when others surrendered. He built castles in his mind until the world was forced to build them in stone. His destiny was not simply films or parks. It was imagination itself made eternal. Henry Ford was told his dream was impossible. He was mocked by experts, rejected by investors, crushed by failure. Yet Ford chose destiny. He built, failed, rebuilt, failed again, until the impossible bent to his endurance. His destiny was not just the car. It was freedom for ordinary people, movement for humanity, the reshaping of civilization. Destiny demands choice. You cannot drift into it. You cannot stumble into it. You cannot inherit it. Destiny is seized, carved, built. Every day you choose, comfort or sacrifice, ease or struggle, safety or greatness. Every choice either builds destiny or buries it. Destiny demands discipline. Without discipline, vision rots. Without discipline, dreams decay. Without discipline, potential dies unborn. Discipline is the daily chisel that carves destiny from stone. Destiny demands sacrifice. You cannot cling to everything and rise into destiny. You must surrender comfort, pleasure, excuses. You must bleed for destiny. You must give for destiny. You must pay for destiny. Destiny demands perseverance. Storms will come. Failures will come. Betrayals will come. The impatient quit. The weak collapse. But the persevering endure, and endurance is the road to destiny. Destiny demands courage. Fear will whisper. Doubt will scream. Critics will mock. But courage silences fear, defies doubt, ignores critics. Courage walks into fire, and in fire destiny is revealed. Destiny demands faith. Faith that what you cannot see is real. Faith that what you are not yet, you can become. Faith that the summit exists, even when clouds hide it. And destiny demands humility. For arrogance collapses, but humility endures. Lincoln led with humility. Carnegie gave with humility. Edison learned with humility. Disney dreamed with humility. Ford built with humility. Humility keeps destiny pure. Destiny is not guaranteed. Many waste it. Many bury it. Many die with clay unshaped, potential unrealized. But for those who choose, destiny is waiting. And destiny is not selfish. True destiny always serves beyond the self. Lincoln's destiny freed a people. Carnegie's destiny educated nations. Edison's destiny illuminated the world. Disney's destiny inspired generations. Ford's destiny empowered humanity. True destiny multiplies. True destiny expands. True destiny endures. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, aim not only for success, not only for achievement, not only for victory. Aim for destiny. Aim for the summit beyond the struggle, the crown beyond the fire, the immortality beyond the grave. Because in the end, you will die. But destiny lives. Destiny is the story told after you are gone. Destiny is the monument carved by your life. Destiny is the echo that time cannot erase. Be like Lincoln, choose destiny in struggle. Be like Carnegie, choose destiny in poverty. Be like Edison, choose destiny in failure. Be like Disney, choose destiny in ridicule. Be like Ford, choose destiny in rejection. And above all, choose destiny in your own life. For destiny is not given. Destiny is chosen. And those who choose it rise beyond death into immortality. Chapter 22, Conquest. The victory over self and world. Conquest. A word often mistaken for empire, for armies, for the clash of steel and banners raised in blood. But the greatest conquest is not of nations. The greatest conquest is not of cities or thrones. The greatest conquest is of the self, and through that, the conquest of the world. Conquest is mastery embodied, discipline lived, sacrifice paid, perseverance made eternal. Conquest is not destruction. Conquest is transformation, the claiming of ground both within and beyond. Every great name in history is remembered for conquest, not always of territory, but of limitation. Not always of land, but of possibility. Not always of others, but of themselves. Conquest is the essence of greatness, the reason their stories endure. Abraham Lincoln conquered despair. Few men carried such sorrow, such repeated defeat, such inner darkness. Depression stalked him, failures crushed him, grief suffocated him. But Lincoln refused surrender. He conquered despair by rising again and again. He conquered his own weakness by forging it into empathy, into resilience, into unshakable resolve. And when the hour came, he conquered not only himself but the divisions of a nation, binding wounds with words that still heal across centuries. Andrew Carnegie conquered poverty. The boy of sweatshops, the son of hardship, could have surrendered to bitterness. But Carnegie seized books, seized learning, seized opportunity. He conquered ignorance, conquered hunger, conquered limitation. His conquest was not only for himself but for millions who would read in the libraries he built, who would learn in the institutions he endowed. His conquest multiplied into nations. Thomas Edison conquered failure. Where others collapsed after a single defeat, Edison endured thousands. Where others surrendered to ridicule, Edison thrived on it. He conquered not by avoiding failure but by transforming it into fuel. His laboratories were not workshops alone, they were battlefields. Every shattered experiment was a fallen enemy. Every failure defeated was a step toward victory. Edison's conquest gave the world light, sound, motion, gifts that still endure. Walt Disney conquered ridicule. He was mocked, dismissed, betrayed. Bankruptcies buried him. Critics tore at him. The world laughed at his visions. But Disney conquered mockery with persistence. He conquered betrayal with imagination. He conquered doubt with relentless creation. His conquest was not of land but of imagination itself. Imagination made stone and song, empire and kingdom, legacy and eternity. Henry Ford conquered rejection. He was told it could not be done. He was told ordinary men would never drive cars. He was told industry could not be reimagined. But Ford conquered disbelief with innovation, conquered rejection with defiance, conquered impossibility with relentless building. His conquest was not simply of machines but of access. He conquered limitation itself, giving freedom of movement to humanity. This is conquest. Not the shallow conquest of ego, not the empty conquest of power, but the eternal conquest of self, of struggle, of impossibility. Conquest requires vision. Without vision, conquest is chaos. With vision, conquest is direction. Lincoln's vision was freedom. Carnegie's vision was knowledge. Edison's vision was progress. Disney's vision was wonder. Ford's vision was mobility. Vision guided their conquest beyond self, into legacy. Conquest requires discipline. Victory is not seized in chaos but forged in order. Discipline turns moments into momentum, momentum into mastery, mastery into conquest. Without discipline, conquest collapses into waste. With discipline, conquest becomes inevitable. Conquest requires sacrifice. You cannot conquer everything while clinging to everything. You must release to rise. You must bleed to build. You must surrender to seize. Lincoln sacrificed peace. Carnegie sacrificed comfort. Edison sacrificed sleep. Disney sacrificed security. Ford sacrificed reputation. Their conquest was the price of what they surrendered. Conquest requires perseverance. One battle is not conquest. One victory is not conquest. Conquest is endless, relentless, tireless. Lincoln persevered through defeats. Carnegie persevered through poverty. Edison persevered through failure. Disney persevered through ridicule. Ford persevered through rejection. Their perseverance turned victories into conquest. Conquest requires courage. Fear is the greatest enemy. Fear enslaves before enemies arrive. Fear chains before battles begin. Courage breaks fear, and in breaking fear, conquest begins. Conquest requires faith. Faith that the unseen can become seen. Faith that defeat is not final. Faith that destiny exists beyond struggle. Faith is the unseen crown of conquest. And conquest requires humility. The arrogant conquer for ego and collapse. The humble conquer for legacy and endure. Carnegie gave. Lincoln served. Edison innovated. Disney delighted. Ford empowered. Their conquest was not selfish, it was expansive. Conquest is also daily. It is not only great moments, but small battles. Rising when tired. Working when weary. Learning when ignorant. Persisting when mocked. Every day is a battlefield. Every choice is a victory or defeat. The great conquest is not won in one act but in countless invisible ones. And conquest is contagious. When one conquers, others are inspired. Lincoln's conquest of despair gave others courage. Carnegie's conquest of poverty gave others hope. Edison's conquest of failure gave others persistence. Disney's conquest of ridicule gave others imagination. Ford's conquest of rejection gave others vision. Your conquest, too, can multiply. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, commit to conquest. Not shallow conquest of applause, but deep conquest of fear, failure, weakness. Conquer laziness with discipline. Conquer excuses with action. Conquer fear with courage. Conquer doubt with faith. Conquer despair with perseverance. Conquer self with vision. Because in the end, the greatest victory is not what you build outside, but what you conquer inside. The man who conquers nations but not himself dies a tyrant. The man who conquers himself, even without nations, dies immortal. Be like Lincoln, conquer despair. Be like Carnegie, conquer poverty. Be like Edison, conquer failure. Be like Disney, conquer ridicule. Be like Ford, conquer rejection. And above all, conquer yourself. For self-conquest is world conquest, and only the self-mastered can master destiny. Chapter 23, Eternity, Building What Cannot Die. Eternity. The word alone chills and inspires. The infinite. The unending. The timeless. Eternity is not measured in seconds, minutes, years, or centuries. Eternity is the realm beyond clocks, beyond calendars, beyond the reach of mortality. And yet, though no man can live forever in flesh, every man can touch eternity in spirit. Every woman can write her name upon it. The path is not through wealth, not through titles, not through fleeting fame. The path is through what you build that cannot die. The path is legacy. The path is transformation. The path is immortality earned. History is the story of eternity written by mortal hands. The pyramids rise from sand while their builders' bones are dust. The words of philosophers echo though their tongues are long silent. The inventions of visionaries endure though their hands no longer move. Eternity is not what you keep, it is what you leave. Abraham Lincoln is dead. His heart ceased, his body buried, his voice silenced by an assassin's bullet. Yet Lincoln lives. His words still command reverence. His courage still ignites leaders. His vision still guides nations. He endures not in flesh but in eternity, because he built more than a life. He built freedom, principle, sacrifice. He paid with blood, but in paying he purchased immortality. Andrew Carnegie is dead. His empire of steel has rusted. His fortune has dispersed. But his libraries stand. His universities still teach. His gifts still multiply into generations he never met. Carnegie endures not in wealth hoarded but in knowledge given. He wrote his name into eternity by releasing what others would cling to. Thomas Edison is dead. His laboratories are quiet, his hands still. But every light bulb burning, every film playing, every sound recording whispers his name. He lives in the inventions that transform civilization. He endures not because he lived, but because he built what cannot die. Walt Disney is dead. His laughter silenced, his pencil laid down. But his dreams walk among us. Children laugh in kingdoms he imagined. Generations are raised on stories he sketched. His imagination became architecture. His vision became empire. Disney endures not because he dreamed, but because he dared to make his dreams flesh. Henry Ford is dead. His assembly lines no longer clatter under his eyes. But the hum of engines, the freedom of roads, the mobility of humanity carry his legacy. He endures not in his factories but in the lives transformed by his vision. Ford wrote his name in eternity by refusing to accept limits. This is eternity. Not life unending, but impact unending. Eternity is the echo of your choices, the shadow of your actions, the fruit of your sacrifice. Eternity is what you carve from time that time cannot erase. But eternity demands cost. Nothing eternal is built cheaply. Nothing eternal is gained without sacrifice. To touch eternity, you must bleed, you must give, you must endure. Lincoln gave his life. Carnegie gave his wealth. Edison gave his strength. Disney gave his security. Ford gave his years. Eternity requires everything. Eternity also demands vision. You cannot stumble into it. You cannot drift into it. Eternity is carved with purpose. Vision directs the hand, aligns the sacrifice, sustains the perseverance. Without vision, effort dies with you. With vision, effort outlives you. Eternity demands humility. The arrogant seek to live forever in name and are forgotten. The humble serve something greater and are remembered. Lincoln did not seek personal glory, he sought freedom. Carnegie did not seek statues, he sought education. Edison did not seek applause, he sought invention. Disney did not seek recognition, he sought wonder. Ford did not seek worship, he sought empowerment. Their humility gave their eternity purity. Eternity demands courage. For the eternal is mocked by the present. Lincoln was hated. Carnegie was criticized. Edison was ridiculed. Disney was mocked. Ford was dismissed. But courage endured, and courage forged eternity. Eternity demands perseverance. For what is eternal is not built in a moment. It is built in decades, in lifetimes. The impatient vanish. The enduring remain. And eternity demands faith. Faith that what you build unseen will one day be seen. Faith that your sacrifice will matter. Faith that your struggle will echo. Without faith, no one endures long enough to build eternity. Eternity is not scale, it is depth. A parent shaping a child may touch eternity more than a king ruling a nation. A teacher shaping one student may build eternity greater than a conqueror seizing cities. Eternity is not measured by how many see you, but by how deeply your impact endures. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, focus not only on life but on eternity. Live not only for now but for forever. Build not only for yourself but for those who come after. Because in the end, you will die. But death is not the end. Death is only silence. Eternity is the echo. The question is not whether you will enter eternity, you will. The question is whether eternity will remember you. Be like Lincoln, write eternity in freedom. Be like Carnegie, write eternity in knowledge. Be like Edison, write eternity in light. Be like Disney, write eternity in wonder. Be like Ford, write eternity in empowerment. And above all, write eternity in the way you live now. For eternity is not tomorrow. Eternity begins today. Chapter 24, Immortality, the fire that outlives flesh. Immortality, the dream of kings, the obsession of alchemists, the longing of poets. Men have hunted fountains, crafted elixirs, built monuments of stone, written their names in fire across the sky, all in search of what death cannot devour. Yet flesh always yields. The strongest warrior weakens. The brightest mind falls silent. The richest titan loses all. Death claims the body. But death cannot claim the fire. Immortality is not the endless beating of a heart. It is the endless beating of an impact. Immortality is not to live forever in flesh, but to live forever in influence. Every great man and woman who has ever walked the earth is dust. But not every one of them is gone. Some live still, not in body, but in immortality. Abraham Lincoln lives. His body is gone, his voice silenced, his eyes closed. Yet his words still resound in parliaments, classrooms, pulpits. His courage still guides leaders, his sacrifice still inspires nations. He lives because his principles are immortal. He chose to give his life for freedom, and freedom does not die. His immortality is written not in tombstones but in liberty itself. Andrew Carnegie lives. His factories are silent, his steel rusted. But his libraries still stand. His universities still teach. His generosity still multiplies. He gave his wealth away, and in giving he purchased immortality. His immortality is not in industry but in education, not in buildings but in minds. Thomas Edison lives. His laboratories are quiet, his hands still. But light still shines, sound still plays, invention still marches. Every time a room is illuminated, Edison breathes again. His immortality is not in fame but in fire, fire turned into electricity, darkness turned into dawn. Walt Disney lives. His laughter is silent, his pencil still. But his worlds are alive. His dreams still move children, still spark wonder, still awaken imagination. Every smile in his kingdoms is his heartbeat. Every story retold is his breath. His immortality is not in drawings but in dreams, dreams made eternal. Henry Ford lives. His voice is gone, his footsteps ended. But engines still hum, wheels still turn, humanity still moves with freedom he imagined. His immortality is not in factories but in freedom, freedom of movement, freedom of opportunity. This is immortality, not the denial of death, but the defiance of it. Death takes flesh. Immortality transcends flesh. Immortality demands sacrifice. No one stumbles into it. Lincoln paid with blood. Carnegie paid with fortune. Edison paid with failure. Disney paid with ridicule. Ford paid with rejection. Each gave, and in giving, they gained what death cannot steal. Immortality demands vision. The shallow live for themselves and are forgotten. The eternal live for what outlives them and are remembered. Lincoln's vision was liberty. Carnegie's vision was knowledge. Edison's vision was progress. Disney's vision was wonder. Ford's vision was empowerment. Vision fuels immortality. Immortality demands discipline. Without discipline, vision rots. Without discipline, dreams decay. Without discipline, nothing survives. Discipline carves immortality into stone. Immortality demands perseverance. Storms will come. Critics will mock. Failures will multiply. The impatient die forgotten. The persevering die immortal. Immortality demands courage. The eternal always looks absurd to the present. Lincoln was hated. Carnegie was condemned. Edison was mocked. Disney was laughed at. Ford was dismissed. But courage endured, and because of courage, they became immortal. And immortality demands humility. Arrogance seeks statues. Humility seeks service. Statues crumble. Service endures. Lincoln served freedom. Carnegie served knowledge. Edison served progress. Disney served joy. Ford served empowerment. Their humility preserved their immortality. Immortality is not scale. It is not fame. It is not millions of followers or towers of gold. It is depth. It is what endures. A parent shaping a child may touch immortality. A teacher shaping one student may live forever. A leader guiding one soul may echo for centuries. Immortality is not measured by how many know your name, but by how deeply your impact shapes the world. Immortality begins with self-mastery. The man who cannot conquer himself cannot outlive himself. The man enslaved to fear, to laziness, to weakness leaves no fire behind. But the man who conquers himself ignites flames that burn beyond death. Immortality is contagious. When one lives for it, others see it as possible. Lincoln's immortality gives courage to the oppressed. Carnegie's immortality gives hope to the poor. Edison's immortality gives fire to the dreamers. Disney's immortality gives wonder to the weary. Ford's immortality gives strength to the builders. Your immortality, too, can awaken souls not yet born. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, do not live merely to survive. Do not live merely to succeed. Do not live merely to be seen. Live to be immortal. Live to build what cannot die. Live to ignite fires that no darkness can smother. Because in the end, the grave comes for all. The difference is whether the grave silences you or amplifies you. The difference is whether death ends you or begins you. Be like Lincoln, find immortality in freedom. Be like Carnegie, find immortality in giving. Be like Edison, find immortality in light. Be like Disney, find immortality in wonder. Be like Ford, find immortality in empowerment. And above all, build your immortality not tomorrow, not someday, but today. For immortality is not a gift. Immortality is a decision. Chapter 25, Victory, the Crown of the Unbroken. Victory. The word has been spoken across battlefields and boardrooms, whispered in the hearts of the oppressed, shouted on podiums, written into history. But true victory is not a trophy. It is not applause. It is not medals or monuments. True victory is the crown of the unbroken, the reward of those who endured, the inheritance of those who refused to quit when every force conspired to silence them. Victory is not given. Victory is earned. Victory is seized by those willing to suffer, to sacrifice, to persist, to bleed, to rise again and again until destiny itself bows before them. Victory is not one moment. It is the sum of every moment. Every discipline practiced. Every fear conquered. Every sacrifice made. every failure endured, every vision pursued, every doubt silenced. Victory is the crown forged from 1,000 scars, the gold refined in the furnace of fire. Abraham Lincoln's victory was not in elections won. It was not even in the White House. His victory was in freedom. His victory was in holding a nation together when it was breaking. His victory was in paying the ultimate price so that liberty could live. Victory crowned him not with wealth, not with comfort, but with immortality. Andrew Carnegie's victory was not in steel alone. His victory was in transforming poverty into abundance, ignorance into knowledge, selfishness into generosity. His victory was not in what he kept, but in what he gave. His victory was not in possessions, but in people. Thomas Edison's victory was not in one invention. It was in thousands. It was in persistence itself. His victory was not in avoiding failure, but in conquering it. His victory was in turning defeat into fuel, ridicule into revelation, exhaustion into illumination. His victory was in lighting the world. Walt Disney's victory was not in cartoons or castles. It was in imagination made eternal. His victory was in proving that wonder can be engineered, that dreams can be built, that laughter can outlast despair. His victory was in bringing joy to millions he would never meet, in transforming ridicule into kingdoms. Henry Ford's victory was not simply the Model T. His victory was in shattering limitation, in placing power into the hands of ordinary men and women, in transforming industry, in multiplying opportunity. His victory was in proving that the impossible can become inevitable. Victory has a pattern. It demands vision. Without vision, you fight blindly. It demands discipline. Without discipline, you collapse. It demands sacrifice. Without sacrifice, you stay small. It demands perseverance. Without perseverance, you quit. It demands courage. Without courage, you never act. It demands faith. Without faith, you never endure. And above all, it demands patience. For victory is slow, victory is delayed, victory is earned over years, decades, lifetimes. Victory is not loud. It is silent. It is built when no one watches, when no one applauds, when no one believes. Victory is the choice to act again in obscurity, to endure again in silence, to sacrifice again in darkness. By the time the world sees victory, it has already been decided in the invisible. Victory is not selfish. True victory always multiplies. Lincoln's victory gave freedom to millions. Carnegie's victory gave knowledge to nations. Edison's victory gave light to humanity. Disney's victory gave wonder to generations. Ford's victory gave empowerment to civilization. True victory always serves. And victory is eternal. Wealth fades. Fame evaporates. Power shifts. But true victory endures because it is written into people, into principles, into progress. Victory is not what you win. Victory is who you become and what you leave. So, if you would focus on yourself until you win, remember this: victory is not someday. Victory is not out there. Victory is in every choice you make now. Victory is in discipline today, in perseverance today, in sacrifice today. Victory is not waiting at the end. Victory is being built in every step. And when the final day comes, when your breath ceases, when your body yields, may your life itself be the proof of victory. May your scars be your trophies, your sacrifices your crowns, your endurance your anthem. May those who come after speak your name not because you lived, but because you won, because you endured, because you built, because you gave, because you conquered. Be like Lincoln, win through freedom. Be like Carnegie, win through generosity. Be like Edison, win through persistence. Be like Disney, win through imagination. Be like Ford, win through revolution. And above all, win through becoming more than you are, through leaving more than you found, through giving more than you took. For in the end, victory is not applause. It is not trophies. It is not monuments. Victory is eternity. Victory is immortality. Victory is the crown of the unbroken. And that crown can be yours if you refuse to quit, if you embrace the fire, if you endure the storm, if you rise again and again, until nothing remains unconquered.